10 a.m.
It's Thursday, October 7th. Good morning. I'm Andrew Boyle. Right now in Ottawa, 9 degrees, Smiths Falls 10, and here's what's making news in Ottawa and the Valley. Friends, relatives, supporters of Anthony Oust all gathered on Jasmine Crescent this morning, a group marching to honor his memory. It was 1 year ago today the 23-year-old died after a fall from a 12th-story window in a Jasmine Crescent apartment building. That happened during a no-knock entry by Ottawa police. Just last month, Ontario's police watchdog decided not to charge officers who were involved in that raid. Organizations like Criminalization and Punishment Education also took part in that march this morning. City News Time, 9:01, and now your forecast with meteorologist Jill Taylor.
Any fog will dissipate. We're very mild. Our high 21 degrees today with sun and cloud. The average high just 14. Tonight mainly clear and 9, and tomorrow sunshine 21 degrees. That's the high today, 21.
And right now in Ottawa, it's 9 degrees. In Smiths Falls, it's 10. Anyone waiting on official guidance to finalize their Thanksgiving plan this weekend amid the fourth wave of COVID pandemic should be able to send out the RSVPs today. Province's Chief Medical Officer of Health will be releasing his advice for safely celebrating this weekend and also later this month, Halloween. Here's City News reporter Jamie Pulfer.
This province is in good shape vaccination-wise. More than 80% of the eligible population has had both shots. And while we are still in a pandemic, the situation has improved.
We have plenty to be thankful for. We are in a very different place this year because of the success of our vaccination rollout to date.
Peel Region's top doctor Lawrence Lowe, one of many speaking out ahead of the long weekend, and Ontario's top doctor will go more in depth with his recommendations today.
We want families to embrace the opportunity to get back together for their mental, physical, social well-being.
Dr. Kieran Moore has already said that celebrating indoors and unmasked with a fully vaccinated group is absolutely appropriate. If there's a combination of vaccinated and unvaccinated people in the group, consider keeping masks on indoors. Now, Ontario's gathering limits of 100 outside and 25 inside are still in place. Dr. Moore will also weigh in on Halloween. Last year, the province recommended that kids in the 4 COVID hotspots at the time, Toronto, Ottawa, Peel, and York regions, should not go trick-or-treating. Will that change this year? I'm Jamie Pulfer.
City News Time at 9:02. Operators, workers, and advocates say funding alone will not fix the crisis in the long-term care homes in Ontario. The Long-Term Care Association welcomed news yesterday. The province intends to spend $270 million to hire more than 4,000 workers, and that's expected before next March. But the CEO, Donna Duncan, says it will take hard work and collaboration to reach the shared goal of increasing hours of direct care for residents during a human resources crisis in that sector. The largest union representing long-term care workers says things will not improve until, quote, abhorrent work conditions are addressed. Pfizer has now asked the U.S. Federal Drug Administration to authorize its COVID vaccine for children who are between the ages of 5 and 11 years. This would bring younger children closer to being eligible for the shot. It is also expected the company will ask Health Canada for that same approval. And the U.S. Coast Guard has now boarded a massive cargo ship as it investigates the rupture of an offshore oil pipeline that sent crude washing up on Southern California beaches this week. I'm Andrew Boyle for News Anytime. Follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
Separating headlines
from hearsay.
It's the Rob Snow Show on Rogers TV and City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
142.9. A liter for regular unleaded gasoline this morning around the corner from the radio station. 142.9. Ooh, that hurts. That hurts, and according to our experts, we're now seeing the highest prices ever charged for gasoline in the city of Ottawa, and the carbon tax goes up in December. Good morning, I guess. And welcome to the Rob Snow Show on City News. It has been a very, very busy week already in the news business. It's not slowing down today. There's plenty happening in the city, across the country, around the world. We have you covered. We're following up on the big news from the Trudeau government yesterday and the federal government's vaccine mandate as unveiled by the Prime Minister and the Minister of Finance. It was certainly a hot topic yesterday. My rights, my rights, my rights. We hear that all the time, right? My rights. You're violating my rights with all of these COVID restrictions. What about my rights? When it comes to COVID-19 restrictions and personal liberty, we are going to explore that angle this morning, the legal perspective, the Charter of Rights perspective. Michael Bryant is going to join us. He is the head of the Canadian Civil Liberties Association. He is a former Attorney General of Ontario. And the Canadian Civil Liberties Association has been on the front lines, I would say, of this issue when COVID restrictions seemingly come into conflict with our rights as they are outlined in the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms. So what about vaccine mandates in the workplace? No jab, no job. What are the charter issues involved in that? Michael Bryant shares his expertise coming up here shortly. Blacklock's reporter, love you guys, has an interesting angle to this story this morning. Mandatory vaccines for the federal workforce, looking at all the employees that yesterday's directive wouldn't cover. And it pegs the number at more than 200,000 employees. 212,000, including, quote, call center operators, federal judges, meat inspectors, park wardens, postal workers, tax auditors, Commons and Senate staff, soldiers, sailors, and aircrew. 212,000 employees in all. Although Chrystia Freeland, I recall, said yesterday that they will be reaching out to the, I guess what you would call the broader public service and asking for the same sort of policies to be put in place. It's an attestation. That is another angle of the story. The whole thing basically relies on the honor system. From what I understand, government workers are going to be asked to sign a document electronically, press send, and it's going to say, I promise I'm fully vaccinated. Scout's honor. Okay? Scout's honor. Now, the Prime Minister said anyone who lies will face severe consequences, and that managers will be able to ask for proof of vaccination at any time. And that each department will eventually be audited. Sounds like quite the make-work project, actually, when you think about it. But that's where we are with it. And we're going to cover it quite a bit this morning as we gather reaction to that announcement. I mean, it affects tens of thousands of people here in Ottawa. We're the mother of all government towns, right? Now, locally here, the city of Ottawa was earlier out of the gate than the federal government with its own vaccine mandate for city employees. And there was a news report yesterday from the public broadcaster that said 4 local unions representing thousands of city workers are filing grievances over the city's mandatory vaccine policy. If you're not vaccinated, you could be suspended without pay, you could be dismissed. One of the unions that is filing a grievance is the Amalgamated Transit Union Local 279, your friendly neighborhood transit union. And the president of that union is Clint Crabtree. And he's on the Rob Snow Show this morning. In addition to his opposition to the city's vaccination policy, ask him about that why he is filing this grievance. Okay. I want to ask him about all the problems right now with public transit in the city, right? Light rail is still out of order. It's kind of weird to drive around the city and not see the trains, I have to say. All of that infrastructure, trains and tracks and stations. None of it in operation, and it's been weeks and weeks. This is coming up to the end of the third week now, and I don't think anybody has any idea when this thing is going to be running again. So we'll ask him about that. The bus system is stretched to the max. It must be taking some kind of toll, you would think, on the rank and file at OC Transpo, even though none of it is their fault. They can only work with what they have, and they don't have much to work with. That's coming up at 11 o'clock, in the 11 o'clock hour. As well, the housing market. The red-hot, never-ending bull market called the Ottawa housing market. And take a look at that this morning. With the help of Frank Napolitano, he always has a few good stories to tell. He's with Mortgage Brokers Ottawa. The Ottawa Real Estate Board recently said that last month was a quote-unquote normal month for real estate activity in Ottawa. A normal month. Well, what does that mean? By the looks of it, it means same old, same old. Prices just keep going up. Average selling price for a condo, $425,300. 14% higher than a year ago. David, I heard it through the grapevine, bought 3 of them last Thursday. No?
You gotta make your money.
I saw
work
that
for
on
you.
Reddit. I saw it on Reddit.
I'm all about passive income.
Average sale price, residential class property, which is basically everything else, 702.1. But year to date, that number is 720.4. Okay, so $720,000, up 25% in a year. 25% in a year. You could buy the S&P 500, or you could buy a house in Ottawa, and the house in Ottawa would vastly outperform the S&P 500. Now, look, every time these numbers come out, David and I, we always look at the price for mobile homes. They're very nice. Have you ever been inside a modern mobile home? They're very nice.
They do good work.
They do good work.
They do good work these
Hot
days.
tubs and everything in the modern mobile home now. What does it cost to just get into a mobile home these days? Okay. Last month, 8 of them were sold, and the average selling price was $155,000. But the average price year to date, you go all the way back to January, was $173,000. Up 29% in a year. $173,000 to live in a trailer park and $1.43 a liter for gasoline. You try and do that on $14.35 an hour. Heck, you try and do that on $25 an hour. Every morning between 10 and 11 o'clock, we do the Talk Back Hour. Hottest hour of talk radio in town. Your opinions, your phone calls. I don't know if we'll have a repeat performance. It was pretty hot yesterday. We broke our personal record here for the Talk Back Hour. 33 calls in an hour, 78 seconds per call. Mandatory vaccines in the workplace. We actually left some people on hold yesterday. Just ran out of time. I'd like to pick up where we left off because the Prime Minister did fill in some of the blanks yesterday. We know more about the policy than we did yesterday. And like I said, it's basically the honor system. I promise I've been vaccinated. So I want to get back into this. I promise I've been vaccinated. Is that good enough for you? I promise I've been vaccinated. Is that good enough for you? Does it go too far? A lot of you thought it went too far yesterday. Rob, I'm a hard no. Or does it not go far enough? Have your say this morning. Rob Snow Show, City News.
My name is Pamela Caillou. I'm a local artist. I'm Métis, and the heritage derives from Algonquin and Huron background that comes from way, way back from the 1600s. I was trained in school classically, like we studied the masters like Picasso, Michelangelo, Van Gogh, and so you'd have to say it's quite different, my style. What I've done is taken the skills that were taught to me by traditional painting and incorporated that with the Indigenous heritage. My art pieces incorporated the energy and spirit of the Mother Earth in pretty much every single one of them, because I want people to realize, even though we might think we are the masters of the domain here on the planet, that is not the case. It's the Mother Earth that's providing a balance and our causes to live and whatnot. And it's just always see her and remember her and respect her. Well, I try to keep my style different, because there are like a handful of Canadian artists that are really well known, like Norval Morrisseau and whatnot, but it's been done. So I kind of want to stay away from the pack, and that's what makes my artwork a little more unique. But at the same time, if you're looking at it, you do know it's Indigenous, and you do know it's the woodland style. I usually start by coming up with an idea, which would be, let's say, 4 days. Well, it depends what's inspiring me at the time. It could be a lot of trees, it could be water, it could be the medicine wheel. I would choose a subject and try to really incorporate what it is I want people to see from that. So then from there, I would have sketchbooks, and I do little sketches of everything, because the canvas is expensive. So you don't want to start something and have to throw it away. And then from there, I go on to the bigger piece on the canvas. Once I have on my sketches the direction I want to take my artwork in. I chose a lot of vibrant colors for the pieces, because if somebody is willing to make the commitment to have my piece of work in their home, I would actually like them to come home after a long, hard day, and some days aren't so great, to look at something that's very joyful.
Rob Snow Show returns on Rogers TV and City News.
1011 FM and 1310 AM.
As promised, let's get in to the civil liberties issues associated with yesterday's mandatory vaccine announcement by the federal government. Michael Bryant is here. He's the executive director of the Canadian Civil Liberties Association. Good morning, Mr. Bryant. Welcome back.
Good morning.
What is your reaction to what the Prime Minister and the Finance Minister announced yesterday, sir?
Well, it's not, I mean, as I understand it, it's to provide some more details to an announcement that he made for the election. But my first reaction was, where's the law and the regulations in place that are going to implement this? Because to answer your questions and all of our questions, we need to see exactly what the exceptions are, and we need to see exactly who this applies to. I know we have the broad strokes, but what this boils down to is the labor law principles that look at two things. Firstly, what does the collective agreement say between the employer and the employee? And in this case, it doesn't cover the pandemic. It will for the next one, but not for this one. And so if not, then the law is what is reasonable. And obviously that's a pretty subjective issue. One of the things that we will be looking at when we get the regulations is, you know, is it proportionate and necessary to have someone who's already working remotely to have to go and get vaccinated? We can see why someone in a public-facing position might fall into that category. But secondly, if a disability is involved, is the government providing some kind of an accommodation? But otherwise, there wasn't much new here in terms of what was being said, although, this is a very big employer, which also has legal powers. So we're obviously watching it very closely to see if they cross the line.
Yeah, but it's not a matter of you wanting to see the fine print. You want to see some print.
Well put. That's right, exactly. And, this is the thing about these announcements from the podiums that has happened throughout COVID-19 is all of these changes that do restrict our liberties can only be done so by legal authority, and it has to be prescribed by law. And so in order for lawyers to these companies, and in order for citizens to be able to figure out, whether or not, the rules apply to them, they have to know what the law is. We can't just trust what the politician is saying from the podium, because I used to be a politician, that, when the Prime Minister is up there, he's doing a couple things. One of them is telling people what the rules are, but the other one is he's politicking. And obviously, the federal government has decided that getting vaccinated and excluding the unvaccinated from society is very popular, and they must have polls that show them as much.
Okay. Even in the absence of say, the finer details, but on the face of it, I took a lot of calls from listeners to this show yesterday. My rights, my rights, my rights. You just can't make me do this. It violates my rights. What rights seemingly would this violate?
Well, it would. I mean, nobody's requiring anybody to. There's no law that is putting needles in people's arms. So really what people are saying is that they're really saying I have a right to this job, and I have a right to keep this job. And, that's not actually what labor law says. People can be dismissed as long as notice periods are provided, and, people can be dismissed with cause. So this is about workers' rights, and workers' rights tend to focus on what the collective agreement says or what the employment contract says. So what did you agree to in the first place? And it is, it's true that the government is trying to use this law to get people vaccinated, to coerce them to vaccinate, to get vaccinated.
Yeah, that's a word that came up yesterday all the time, too.
But on the other hand, governments for the last 20 years have been coercing people to stop smoking. Right? Governments do that. They will engage in social behavior modification efforts that fall short of bans or mandatory vaccination. So, that's what they're doing here. The question, and they're really walking right up to the line of what is reasonable. But this is a pandemic, and there's a way to do it. I'm just not sure that they're going to actually do it in a way that does achieve the proportionality that would be necessary under the law.
Because it sounded as though the lawyer in you was already getting ready to look at this, say, from a Section 1 point of view in the Charter, and going down all of those things that a government would have to meet under the burden called the Oakes test, and all of those hoops that the government would have to jump through. And the first one is what the government is trying to accomplish. Is it pressing and substantial?
Right.
Is it pressing and substantial to have as many Canadians be vaccinated as possible so that our workplace is as safe as possible? Right.
Well, and I think if that's what this comes down to, I just sum up these government orders during COVID. Like for me, in my head, what I do is I ask, is it necessary, and is it proportionate?
Proportionate, yep.
And I think that the case for necessity can be made here, although we still don't know how many people who are vaccinated are walking around with COVID in them that make them infectious, in which case the necessity of this, it becomes questionable, because it's not about vaccination isn't. It's not that we want everybody to be vaccinated. It's that we want to kill COVID, right?
Okay.
So if we want to kill COVID, is this necessary? And, you can, and I think right now the science is such that, yeah, you can certainly make that case that it's pressing and substantial. And then the next one is it proportionate? And, in that case, it's always about the people on the margins. It's always about vulnerable populations. And I think that in the case of workers' rights, it's somewhat different.
Okay.
In that it's not, you don't need to go down the constitutional minefield. You just have to answer this nebulous question of, is it reasonable? But what's tricky about that is during a pandemic, what's reasonable feels very different than what's reasonable outside of a pandemic. And, how much of it is science-based and how much of it is fear-based and how much of it is politically driven. So I think generally speaking, that an employer can do this, and the federal government is an employer that can do this. But really what we will be looking at is what the exemptions look like, and does it in fact deal with that small minority of people that really are going to be potentially negatively affected by this.
Okay. When you look at it in kind of the big picture and the totality of it all, everything that the government has tried to do in the name of public health over the last year and a half or so, where it seems to come in conflict with personal liberty, whether it's bylaw giving out tickets, limiting interprovincial travel, imposing curfews on citizens as they did in the government of Quebec. Now the federal government and other employers is saying we want to impose mandatory vaccination. How well do you think government is doing at balancing public health policy with personal freedom? How well has government done here, in your opinion?
I think that it's different regionally, and some provincial governments have taken rights more seriously than others, and the federal government, by and large, certainly with respect to the COVID contact tracing app, did cover off privacy rights. I think governments are making efforts, but occasionally it will feel more political than public health based, and there's quite a bit of tough talk going on right now by the Prime Minister. If you want to be employed by us, then you got to get vaccinated. That kind of thing. Is that tough talk translated into unreasonable regulations? It's too soon to tell because we don't have those regulations. But there has been an effort. The part about this that is confounding, from my perspective as someone who's supposed to and whose job is to defend civil liberties, is governments necessarily have to try different things, and they might not have all the information they need to try them. And normally that's not good enough under our Constitution. But during a pandemic, it does appear that it's necessary to do that. And it then becomes incumbent on the government to make corrections. And so it can't be the policy is written in stone and once and there for all time. It needs to have a sunset clause on it. It needs to be reviewed. It needs to be amended when inequities arise.
Thank you, Michael Bryant. Great to hear from you this morning.
Thank you.
Yep, the Executive Director of the Canadian Civil Liberties Association. Coming up, Ontario politics this week. This is the Rob Snow Show on City News.
local news in Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News, now on 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
It's Thursday, October 7th. Good morning. I'm Andrew Boyle. Right now in Ottawa and in Smiths Falls, 11 degrees. Here's what's making news this hour. Several groups and individuals gathered at an apartment building this morning to mark 1 year since the death of Anthony Oust. The 23-year-old died in a fall from a 12th floor window when police conducted a no-knock raid on the unit he shared with family members. The rally and march is to demand justice for Anthony, who they say was a victim of police violence. Last month, Ontario's police watchdog decided not to charge officers who were involved in that raid. A fire investigator trying to find the cause of a blaze which destroyed 12 townhomes under construction near the Canadian Tire Centre. It was shortly after 6, a huge plume of smoke visible as far away as North Gore was seen from this construction site. 12 of 36 homes under construction in that new subdivision were destroyed. Ontario's Chief Medical Officer of Health set to release his advice today for safely celebrating Thanksgiving and Halloween. Earlier this week, Dr. Kieran Moore did touch on some of his recommendations for this coming long weekend, saying celebrating indoors and unmasked with a fully vaccinated group is absolutely appropriate. City News Time at 9:32. I'm Andrew Boyle. For news anytime, follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
The world is changing.
So keep up with Rob.
The Rob Snow Show returns on Rogers TV and City News, 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
And now it's time for Ontario Politics This Week, with our good friends Lindsay Maskell, Liberal strategist, former advisor to Dalton McGuinty. Good morning, Lindsay.
Good morning, Rob.
Great to hear from you. Andrew Brander, senior consultant, Crestview, and former advisor to the Ford government. Good morning, Andrew.
Hey there, Rob.
I hope both of you are enjoying nice fall weather in the big smoke. And that everything
it's been
is
wonderful
good.
here.
Yeah, it's very nice. Very nice in Ottawa, too, as well. So, legislature's back in action. MPs back in business at Queen's Park, and now the mad dash is on to the next election campaign, June 2nd, 2022. Andrew Brander, in your opinion, what are the legislative priorities for the Ford government?
Well, I think we saw pieces of what those are going to be in the throne speech kicking off this legislative session. Look, I'll start off by recognizing there's been a lot of people critical of the speech from the throne, saying it was, rather uneventful. But I think it's important that we recognize it was the government's first reset, really, since the start of the pandemic. So I think it was an important opportunity to reflect on what helped us accomplish it. Our frontline healthcare workers, businesses who made sacrifices in the greater good of public health, and of course the public writ large for exceeding the expectations that we had going in on this around vaccination rates. The speech is also meant to address what your government intends to accomplish in that sitting. And look, we know there's probably only maybe about 3 to 4 months worth of actual sitting days.
Right.
We take out the holidays. And so this government chose to focus on the things that they can actually deliver on in the session, and it's clear what those are. A desire for the government to tidy up some of their loose ends and some of the pieces that are a bit more vulnerable on. Long-term care will obviously be a big focus with the minister promising legislation coming in the next few weeks. There's going to be some more additional supports for getting businesses back on track and further investments in healthcare. So, when people are critical of an uneventful growth and a lack of an agenda, I would just say when you go to a concert, they don't play their greatest hits until the end of the show. You're gonna see more of that probably coming up in the budget and in the months ahead.
Oh, I want to hear that For the People song again. I hope they play that when they come out for their encore. For the people.
It's in the new ad.
For the people. Yeah.
I can't wait. Can't wait.
Okay. What do you... you crack me up sometimes, Andrew, the way you put things. Lindsay, what do you see as priorities for this government?
Well, to use Andrew's concert reference, usually you go to a concert because you know what they're going to play and you can anticipate some of the songs. But no, this is it was a bit of a disappointment for people looking for some kind of roadmap about where the Ford government was going to go. In the sense, particularly because people are feeling, we're doing really well in Ontario with the case average coming down and with obviously with the positivity rate coming down, and people feeling pretty optimistic about how our reopening has been going and with the implementation of the vaccine passport. So the throne speech and the legislative agenda feels like it's still just pandemic response with sort of no forward offer, with the fact that we are way under a year away from an election. So it seemed very light, and I realized that long-term care legislation could be very significant. Mm-hmm. But if you think about the work that has to happen, yes, you play the greatest hits towards the end of the concert, but you really do have to get people in now early and get them thinking, and especially with the turning the page after this federal election. So there needed to be more than just long-term care, and we're going to fight Ottawa for a bigger share of healthcare funding. So there needed to be something more to kind of remind Ontarians that we need a government that, we're a government that could do more than just deal with a pandemic. We have to have a plan. We have to be rebuilding, and what does that look like?
Right. Look, the second largest expense behind healthcare for any provincial government is education. Right? How do you forget education? How do you not mention education in your throne speech?
And especially when kids are...
to pick up on Andrew's line of thinking, when I go to a Guns N' Roses concert, I expect to hear Sweet Child of Mine. I really do. If they're not playing Welcome to the Jungle, I'm leaving, and I'm pretty upset with Axl and Slash. Okay, just as I don't know how you come up with a throne speech and you don't mention one of the largest budget items for your government, the public education system. How do you forget something like that, Andrew?
I don't know if I've been to many concerts where they haven't played my favorite songs, so I'll try to stop going back to that analogy now. But I will say, look, I think it was a bit of a missed opportunity there for sure. I'd agree. I would just say there were certainly a number of announcements that Minister Lecce did in the lead up to the start of the school year that were overshadowed naturally by the federal election campaign. They could have used the speech to highlight some of those additional investments in the work that's being done, because quite frankly, if they had been talking about investments that they were making in schools a month into the school year, people would have suggested that was too late. So, I'm not saying that there shouldn't have been a mention of it. I think that was a bit.
I would have just I would have pointed to, look, this is the amount of money we have spent on ventilation in schools and safety in schools and da-da-da-da-da, and we will continue to do that, or something. It remains a priority for our government, or something like that. You got to put something in there. My gosh.
And it's such a great strategy.
It's like going to an ABBA concert and not hearing Dancing Queen, for crying out loud.
And such a missed opportunity to not use the throne speech, where as a tool is a lovely woman, our Lieutenant Governor General, saying that for you. Like, the government writes the speech, she reads it. So it's a real missed opportunity to not have to make that play of saying something that you want to say wonderful about your education plan and safety of kids and the importance of learning, and have somebody else say it for you that looks like an endorsement of your plan.
Okay, so as much as it is about introducing legislation, debating legislation, and passing legislation, this one is more about getting ready for the election. Can we agree on that? Can we all agree on this? Yes. Carried?
Yeah.
Carried. Okay. So what can Doug Ford point to as a success? What do you think key messages will be from the premier, the people around him? We did this. This is what worked. This is a success. Andrew, what do you think, Andrew?
So not unlike the federal election, I do think the provincial election will, in large part, be a referendum on pandemic management.
Okay.
And I do think that at least that's how the opposition should frame things, especially if you have either a relatively unknown leader or a leader with low approval ratings. You want to make the election a referendum on the other guy. So if the government is forced to play in this space, I think one of the best proof points for the Ford government will be building stuff, and you're starting to see that. You're starting to see that in some of the ads that are coming out in terms of how Ford's trying to frame things. Expanding hospital capacity, increased training facilities. In order to address the HHR crisis, new beds in long-term care, all fitting into this. Of course, a lot of infrastructure projects around transit. The Ontario line will be significant, and these aren't just plans anymore. These are actual buildings that are going up in communities. They're things that local candidates can point to and say, that is a new long-term care facility being built.
See that light rail in Ottawa? We helped do that.
Is it running again?
No, it's still not running. No. Still not running. No. Can you imagine? I don't know how many, 17 days, 18 days now it's been down? Yeah, it's crazy.
I think that's going to be a big proof point. And it gives something people can point to.
Okay.
That improves their lives.
All right. So there's some of the successes. What do you expect the line of attack to be, Lindsay?
The line of attack. Well, the interesting thing is we've already seen this because they are doing the tactic of try to define your opposition early.
Right.
So both the NDP and the Conservatives have been out with attack ads. But the interesting thing will be the missed opportunity of this comparison, and something that we just saw obviously through the federal election that could have worked well is, pointing to other jurisdictions. But he's not going to point to his friend Jason Kenney and say, look what a better job I did, or we're in a better position because. So his comparables are not where he would like to go. So that might be a bit of a missed opportunity. But he definitely is going to go after his opponents and talk about, in both cases, one, having no experience governing, and what would Miss Horvath on the fourth kick of the can, offer differently.
Yeah.
And with Stephen Del Duca, the risk is going to attack him about his time with the Wynne government, but also it does mean that he has experience in government, and also with the big infrastructure and transit projects, and some real management experience. So they're trying to define him before he gets too much of a chance, although I do give him credit. I thought they did a great job of working that time between the leaders' speeches in the morning.
I don't know, Lindsay. I think opinions on Doug Ford are pretty well defined now. Right? Do you not think?
Yeah, sorry, I meant about that they are trying to towards Stephen, that the opposite.
Oh, Stephen Del Duca, okay.
That they're trying to form that they're out there early.
Oh,
Stephen Del Duca has committed that they are not going to run any attack ads. And let's be honest, they don't probably have a lot of budget for advertising.
Yeah, they don't have any money to run attack ads.
Yeah, so you're not going to see that. But what you are going to try to, what I imagine in terms of the attack ads that are out there now, that's a very common tactic, especially because you need to start shaping this in people's minds early.
The mighty Liberal Party of Ontario can't even afford an attack ad. All right, but Doug Ford's...
I believe it is actually a bit of a, many campaigns we've never run an attack ad. Didn't say I wouldn't run an ad, just not an attack ad.
Yeah, well, in elections past, you really didn't have to, because the third parties ran all the attack ads for the Liberal Party anyway. So when we come back, as you can tell, there are new attack ads out. Both Lindsay and Andrew have mentioned them. We have them, and we'll play them, because we love running attack ads around here and getting reaction to them. When we come back, Rob Snow Show. This is City News.
I started, as I said, at Lester's Barber Shop, and it was kind of, it was one of those things that it was just an opportune time for me to get into it, just because he had decided that he was going to retire after the fire, and then the opportunity presented itself that I could open my own shop. And so I went from a 150 square foot space on St. Patrick's Street to a 600 square foot space just on Beechwood to now here, and I'm in a 1,400 square foot space now. And I don't know, it's been an interesting journey because, you know, you think that you're just going to be just you or a really small space, and then all of a sudden, you know, you've got 10 other people working for you, you're in a much bigger space, and even incorporating the boutique. Last March, when all of this started, I mean, we closed down a little bit earlier than everybody else, and I'm going to say, you know, being honest, part of it was social pressure. We shut down before everybody else did, and I'm watching all these other salons, you know, just be really responsible and saying we don't want to be a part of the process. So we got ahead of it and closed, and then, you know, the week later, the government's like, everybody's shutting down, and so it was a little nerve-wracking. I guess the first step of us, you know, trying to innovate and just keep moving forward was when the salon is closed, right? It's like, what do you do? Our whole industry is based on being with people, cutting their hair, providing a service. You have to be people together to do that. You can't do that remotely at all. So one of the first things that I saw in our industry, what people were trying to do is they were selling their hair products that they had. And luckily, I've had a website that always had a web store in the back. I just never used it. So as soon as I saw that people were doing that, I was like, okay, this is what we're going to do. I'm going to load up all my stuff. And so that worked out really, really well. And then from there, I managed to find a place that was like a wholesale website that allowed you to have net 60 days. So you don't have to, you can order all the stuff. You don't have to prepay any of it. There's free returns, all that. So that made it really easy for me to bring in other products and start trying to sell it. And so I went from selling hair products to shave products to bath and body products to a little bit of clothing and jewelry, and now it's just morphed into this whole, like, I want to make it a whole legit boutique. And by December of last year, I decided that this is a full-fledged thing, and we're going to separate it. It's its own company. So it's really finding an opportunity that's there and running with it. So it's been really fun. Our clients are loving it. Our clients that have been here for a long time, they love it.
There.
Fun.
The Rob Snow Show returns
on Rogers TV and City News 101.1 FM
and 1310 AM.
All right, we're back. Ontario politics this week. Andrew Brander, Lindsay Maskell. Lindsay, I was just scrolling through my Twitter feed, and Lindsay, I just learned, does not like pumpkin pie. It's not like pumpkin pie. Gosh, a liberal and doesn't like pumpkin pie. Why do we have you on this panel again?
I didn't think it would be the pie that would get me put off.
I don't know, Andrew, pumpkin pie, thumb up, thumb down? Or?
I mean, I couldn't agree with Lindsay anymore. Hard pass on the pumpkin pie.
Hard pass on the pumpkin pie.
Wow, that's the thing we agree on.
Man, oh man, holy cow.
I'll take apple.
Apple, okay, all right. I'm a big fan of pumpkin pie. I really like pumpkin pie. I also like attack ads. I do. I have a particular fascination with them. So we're going to play some. They're all PC ads. We haven't. There is a rumor that the NDP will release some ads soon. I don't think they've been released yet. And as we mentioned, the poor old Liberals are trying to scrape together enough money just to run a campaign for Mr. Del Duca, so they don't have any ads. But the PCs they're swimming in cash, so they have all kinds of money. First one here goes after Stephen Del Duca, the Liberal leader. Roll tape.
Remember life under Kathleen Wynne?
Oh,
Stephen Del Duca wants to take us back. He was Wynn's right-hand man when they sent your hydro bill skyrocketing. Sold Hydro One, all while Liberal insiders got rich. He sat in cabinet while good-paying jobs fled the province, remained idle while creating only 611 new long-term care beds, leaving our most vulnerable unprepared for the pandemic. Ontario crumbled under Kathleen Wynne and Stephen Del Duca. Let's not go back. Authorized by the CFO for the Ontario PC Party.
Okay. I can confirm most of that is largely accurate. Okay. Okay. The second one, so they're going, to Lindsay's point, define the opponent before they can define themselves, right? Right? Okay. Now, this one goes after Andrea Horwath. Let's listen to this.
Andrea Horwath is a politician that says one thing and does another. She talks about tackling the housing crisis, but opposes building more homes. She says she stands with workers, but supports job-killing red tape. She talks about how expensive everything is, but plans to raise your taxes. She says she's against gridlock, but opposes building new highways. Ontario NDP's Andrea Horwath, a politician that says one thing and does another. Authorized by the CFO for the Ontario PC Party.
Okay, all right, okay. Definite suburban flair to that one, I think, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yep. You know, building more homes, building more highways. Oh, yes, and this is the one that's created the most buzz, and we're the PC Party, unlike those other two dastardly leaders. We're the party of yes. Roll tape.
I hear it all the time. Politicians are famous for finding reasons to say no. That's not me. I'm Doug Ford, leader of the Ontario PCs, and we're the party saying yes. Yes to more opportunity, bringing more workers into skilled trades. Yes to building highways you can drive on so you don't sit in gridlock. Yes to building homes more families can afford. We're the only party looking to the future, and we're ready to build.
Authorized by the CFO for the Ontario PC Party.
Okay. Very inspirational. What do you take away from those ads, Andrew? What do you think?
You know, a few things grabbed my attention from this interesting set of three ads. So you have the two ads obviously separately defining the other two leaders,
yep.
And then even the positive ad sort of does a nice juxtaposition in contrasting, but in doing so sort of binds, Kathleen Wynne, Stephen Del Duca, and Andrea Horwath all together in this same sort of, they're the ones that say no. Because in the contrast ad, let's call it, against the Liberals, and that's telling me that they're now starting to see some polling that people are becoming familiar with the Liberal leader, which quite frankly was a surprise to me.
Okay.
And I think that ad could have been done without specifically the use of his name. So clearly there's some polling coming out suggesting that people are at least learning about him, which has obviously been a challenge for the opposition.
Yeah, but clearly they also think there's still some mileage. They must have some data or focus group data or polling data or something that says people
still dislike Kathleen Wynne.
Still don't like Kathleen Wynne.
Yeah, and one thing I'd say about this also,
if you didn't like Kathleen Wynne, you're not going to like this guy either. Yeah.
And clearly they learned a lesson from the federal Conservatives who waited too late into a campaign to start motivating their base. They're starting early on this, trying to get people. People.
Well, that's a Harper thing. And there are Harper people involved here, right? So yeah. Get in there and repeat it, hammer it away every day.
Exactly.
Michael Ignatieff, he didn't come back for you. Stefan Dion, you think it's easy to make priorities? All of these, and you hammer it. Okay? Lindsay, what do you think, Lindsay?
Well, I think we're going to end up seeing some different iterations of their attempts at attack ads because there's a couple of flaws. So I'll point out that
okay.
The liberal brand is really strong. right? So they don't say Liberal, they talk about Kathleen. But there's a big difference between Justin Trudeau talking about Doug Ford while he is still a live player affecting people's lives versus the ghost of, right? Like you don't hear them talking about, Harper and going back, but something that's just like a ghost of a memory that doesn't that doesn't probably hold up. There'd be some polling that would say people remember that as not a great time, but it probably isn't strong enough to run on to define a candidate.
All right.
Particularly when they have a strong party brand. The other thing is the 905 attack sort of out on Andrea feels weird because that's not where they play, right? So it feels like a
That's not where the NDP plays, you mean?
Yeah, it's a bit of a miss on the geography of that one.
Oh, I see.
It doesn't
Okay.
speak
All
to
right.
the urban. It's definitely not, it's not where the NDP have their strength, where they would want to make that message doesn't sort
Focus
of work
more
with
on
that
416.
Yeah, where you
issues.
would go after them where, again, Hamilton, somewhere down in Niagara, but like some of that
okay. All right.
doesn't line, it just sort of doesn't line up. So it kind of doesn't feel like they've got where they're going to go with for, obviously the full length of the campaign. Yeah.
Okay. Very interesting. How much does it hurt Del Duca that he's not in the legislature these days? Is that a major disadvantage for him, not being in the legislature?
I'll say not at all because Doug Ford's also rarely there, right? And it's going to be such a short session.
Right.
The other thing is you do have, if there's one thing you want, it's nice clips of you in the legislature saying something, delivering something, and the one advantage is that Stephen Del Duca actually does have that.
Okay. Andrew?
Yeah, I mean, I'd agree. It really comes down to how the Liberal leaders deciding to use that time outside the House and whether they're being effectively using that time. And what matters at the end of the day is what's running on the news ticker, what's in the evening news. Haven't seen a lot of him, so would be interested to know how he's using his time outside of the House.
Well, if you didn't like Kathleen Wynne, you're not going to like him.
I can't wait till we're on talking about the ghost of my Terrace ads.
Oh yeah, it's only a matter of time. You can set your watch to that.
Exactly. With respect to what Lindsay said earlier, they have been known at times to bring back leaders of the past.
I bet they have. Okay, look, enjoy the rest of your week, and I hope you have a great Thanksgiving and a great long weekend, and we'll talk soon, okay? Bye-bye.
Enjoy your pumpkin pie.
We will. I'll have yours. Lindsay Maskell, Andrew Brander, that's Ontario Politics This Week. Rob Snow Show Talk Back Hour is coming up next on City News.
WW 1310 AM in Ottawa.
And CJET 1011 FM in Smiths Falls and the Valley. Number 1 for local news in Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News, now on 1011 FM and 1310 AM.
It's Thursday, October 7th. Good morning. I'm Andrew Boyle. Right now in Ottawa and in Smiths Falls, 11 degrees. Here's what's making news in Ottawa and the Valley. Several groups and individuals gathered at an apartment building this morning to mark 1 year since the death of Anthony Oust. The 23-year-old died in a fall from a 12th floor window when police conducted a no-knock raid on the unit he shared with some family members. The rally and march is to demand justice for Anthony, the group say he was the victim of police violence. Now, last month, Ontario's police watchdog, the Special Investigations Unit, decided not to charge the officers who were involved in that raid on the building on Jasmine Crescent. City News Time 10:02. Now your forecast with meteorologist Jill Taylor.
Any fog will dissipate. We're very mild. Our high 21 degrees today with sun and cloud. The average high just 14. Tonight, mainly clear and 9, and tomorrow, sunshine, 21 degrees. That's the high today, 21.
And right now it's 11 degrees in Ottawa and in Smiths Falls. If you are waiting for the final word on what's allowed during Thanksgiving celebrations this weekend, the province's top doctor will unveil that at 3 this afternoon. Dr. Kieran Moore will be updating what impact provincial COVID restrictions will have not only on Thanksgiving this weekend, but on Halloween, just over 3 weeks from now. Last year, there were no gatherings, but there was also no vaccine. Now, over 80% of people are vaccinated in the province. Dr. Moore has already said if you're having a family gathering under 25 people indoors and everyone's vaccinated, you can unmask if you feel comfortable doing so. Anyone involved in indoor organized sport has been sent a letter from Ottawa Public Health. It outlines the vaccine requirements and measures to protect the unvaccinated children, so those under the age of 12, and youth at high risk of COVID transmission. Starting Saturday this week, all coaches and volunteers have to show proof of vaccination before entering any sport facility. Now, anyone who would like to learn more, a town hall hosted by both Ottawa Public Health and the Sports Council will be held tomorrow afternoon starting at 1. You can find a link at ottawapublichealth.ca. We're just getting some new numbers in on the case count today in Ontario of COVID-19. 587 new cases today and 5 more deaths reported right across Ontario. This is from just over 37,000 tests that were done with a positive rate of 1.7%. We can tell you this hour that 32 of these new cases are in Ottawa, 24 are in the Eastern Ontario Health Unit, 5 in Leeds, Grenville, Lanark. There are 2 new cases in Renfrew County. Pfizer has asked the American government to allow its COVID-19 vaccine in children ages 5 to 11. Aaron Katersky with more.
This is what many parents of elementary school-aged kids have been waiting for. Pfizer formally requested emergency use authorization for its vaccine in 5 to 11-year-olds. The FDA's science advisors will discuss it later this month, and assuming they decide it's safe and effective for younger kids, the shots could begin within weeks. Kids have been at lower risk of severe COVID-19, but they can sometimes get quite sick. Pfizer studied the vaccine in 2,200 kids 5 to 11 years old and found no serious side effects.
Now, following approval from the U.S. Food and Drug Administration, advisors to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention will decide whether to recommend the shot for youngsters. The same approval request is expected to be made in Canada. A powerful earthquake has struck the Tokyo area of Japan. No word yet on things like damage, but officials say right now there is no tsunami danger. Someone who bought a 649 ticket in Ottawa is almost $6 million richer this morning. Last night's $11.5 million draw was split between 2 tickets. One was sold in Ottawa, the other in Western Canada. The winner's share is almost $5.8 million. I'm Andrew Boyle for News Anytime. Follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
It's time to talk back.
On the Rob Snow Show.
Have your say and call now.
613-750-1310.
On the federal government's vaccine mandate for its employees. 750-1310. Is this good enough? Or does it go too far? Or does it not go far enough? Where do you come down on this? I want to start this morning right where we left off yesterday morning. Rumored for weeks, soon to be reality. And you certainly had a lot to say about this vaccine mandate yesterday. And that was before we had the nitty-gritty on it. And we may not have maybe the nitty. I don't know if we have the gritty just yet. But let's have a follow-up discussion on it now, shall we? Because we do have more details than we had this time yesterday on what the federal government is actually planning here. You have to attest, okay? If you work for the federal government, attest. It's basically an honor system for most employees of the federal government, city's largest employer. It is an attestation, honor system. Okay. I promise I'm fully vaccinated. Is that good enough? I promise I'm fully vaccinated. Okay. They're going to be given some kind of statement electronically, okay? And they will have to submit it and swear. I promise I'm fully vaccinated. I guess they press send and submit it, and they'll have by the end of the month to do that. And Mr. Trudeau said yesterday that a manager will be able to ask for proof of vaccination at any time. And then all the government departments that are involved in this will be doing audits, okay, like a follow-up. And if you're busted, well, you're busted. And you'll be put on unpaid leave, and I guess you could lose your job. The Prime Minister said yesterday there will be severe consequences. Severe consequences were his words. Okay? And that's the policy. All supposed to come into effect by the end of the month. And I would like to know what you think about it. It's an issue that set the phone lines on fire yesterday during the talkback hour. Most calls ever, David. Most calls ever. Okay? Since I started the show here on City News. This topic. Very divided, too. Very divided. By the end of the hour yesterday, by a slim margin, it was three votes. Most of our callers came out in favor of this policy, but it was close. It was close. If we had another hour, I'm not sure how it would have turned out. But again, it's all headed for the courts, I think. Like other pandemic-related regulations, ended up being challenged in court. Lockdown policies, curfews, interprovincial travel bans. I think this one is destined for the courts as well, and probably make for some compelling legal arguments. Okay? We'll see where it goes. We'll see where it goes. I swear I'm fully vaccinated, and a government auditor at some time in the future will make sure that's the case. Is that good enough for you? Does it go too far? Or does it not go far enough? That's 750-1310, 750-1310, 613-750-1310. First call up this morning is in Blackburn Hamlet. Chris, good morning, Chris. I think David hung up on Chris. Mitch in Ottawa. Mitch, you're on City News, Mitch.
Hey, how's it going?
It goes, sir. With or without me, it goes.
Okay, so I'm definitely all for vaccination, and they can go even further.
Go even further, okay.
Oh, yes, for sure. We are in a democratic situation that when we elect the government, I might not like who they elected, but I have to follow what's going on.
Right.
Right now, we have 80% of the people that are vaccinated.
Yes.
Why can we not put the 80% and say, hey, the rest of you follow us? Because democratically, we have more votes than you do. So you can't go shopping. You can't go to the hospital. You can't do anything because you're not vaccinated.
Okay. Well, it's kind of heading in that direction already, isn't it, Mitch? That if you're not vaccinated, the things you can do are becoming increasingly limited by the day, Mitch.
But they have to limit it more.
Limit it more. Okay. Limit it more. Interesting. Okay.
They can still go to Home Hardware. They can still go to Home Depot.
Yeah, the retail sector is largely exempt from any kind of vaccine passport kind of thing, right? Yeah.
Exactly.
Right,
I'm not
right.
saying. I'm saying that everybody should be vaccinated.
Yes.
Except if you have a medical reason.
But here we're talking about the workplace, Mitch. Here we're talking about people's jobs. We're talking about people's livelihoods. Talking about people's careers. Good government jobs, Mitch. Good government unionized jobs, right?
There's more people vaccinated than not.
Yes. That's not really my question, Mitch. The policy is, Mitch. The policy is going to be. They're going to have to basically sign a document that says, I swear I'm fully vaccinated. They don't have to show proof. They just have to kind of promise. You take my word for it. Okay, is that good enough?
You have to show proof.
I should have to show proof.
I have my double dose.
Yeah.
I have my paper.
You have your paper, right? Yeah.
And I could show that to my boss anytime.
They're not asking for papers.
But they should.
They should. Okay, that's kind of what I want to get at, Mitch. Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, great call, sir. Great call. Good to hear from you. All right, let's try Chris in Blackburn Hamlet again. Chris.
Good morning, Rob.
Yes, Chris. Nice to hear from you. I promise I'm fully vaccinated. Take my word for it. This is my attestation. Is that good enough for you? That's kind of where we're at right now on this.
No, I don't like the policy. I tried to call yesterday, but couldn't get through. But I would have been one of the hard no's.
Hard no, okay. Goes too far, you think? It's
going, way too far.
Way too far.
Yeah.
Okay.
I find it ironic that the Prime Minister. Well, first of all, they say that 80%. I know not all public servants work in Ottawa, but the majority do. And 80% of adults in Ottawa have the vaccination.
Right.
So that would probably include at least 80%, or maybe even more.
Yeah, you work from the assumption that it's kind of like a good sample of the general population, right? Yeah.
And of that 80%, about almost like 95% are working from home. So where is the danger? You're working from home in your basement.
Good point. You're not going to catch COVID during a Zoom call, right? So,
exactly.
Yeah. I appreciate that point of view. I guess they want to have a uniform standard for every government employee, I guess, is their thing.
I just find it interesting. We just had an election 2 weeks ago. The Prime Minister, I'm assuming, wanted to get a majority. He didn't get the majority.
No.
And now he makes an edict from the throne of the emperor saying, thou shalt have this vaccination or you lose your job. So you don't really need to have a majority to make a decision, do you? You can make a decision based for the whole country, and you don't even have a majority. You don't even have a popular vote.
But you think it goes too far?
Way too far.
Way too far. Okay, there you go. 2 calls. One doesn't go nearly far enough. The other one goes way too far. All right, let's see where the next caller is after our first break. Hang on, Greg, Sam, Maggie, got one phone line available. City News Talk Back Hour 750-1310.
I'm blessed to be married to someone who is a scientist and spent a lot of time following what was happening over in China ahead of time. So he did give us the heads up that this was coming. Not that we believed him right off the bat, but when it did happen very, very quickly, we were prepared. We had hand sanitizer and we were set up to not close our doors. So we locked the kitchen down at Wellington Street, but we left this kitchen open. We put in protocols immediately. We only allowed our very small crew of 4 or 5 people in at the time. No deliveries were allowed to come in or out of the building without, they just weren't allowed in and out of the building. So we met them at the loading dock and had very strict protocols in place right away. We had masks and hand sanitizer and the whole thing. So we're very lucky from that perspective, and we're able to, learn as we went as far as doing small, individually packed caterings, the frozen soup program, food for the Ottawa mission. So we didn't have to close the kitchen and then learn how to reopen it. We just were able to modify and shift as we needed to. Because of our partnership with the Ottawa mission, we were able to very quickly help support them. They were able to send us some product and some supplies, so it wasn't a burden on our business, and we were able to supply the staffing and the packaging to help produce that when they needed it the most. And we produced about 1,400 meals a week to complement their meals, and we started our soup program right away. We realized very quickly that there was a need in the community to get together and all work together, not only to support local, but also just to support all the people that were suddenly in a position of, being locked down and not being able to get out. So by starting that soup program, our community, our clients got online and started making donations for the soups, and we were able to produce the soups and get them back out to people that needed it. We're right now currently making 150 liters of soup per week, but we've made, I would say, 5,000 or 6,000, easily since the pandemic. Probably more. I'd have to do the math, but lots. I think everybody in the city has to be very aware of how blessed we were to have great weather this summer and people were able to get out and about, and that's going to shift. So we do have to be much more aware of who our most vulnerable is, and I really think we have to work together as groups. There are so many organizations in the city that are doing something and contributing and working together, and I think it doesn't matter who, but see what you can do to just step up and help them, whatever it is, whether it's driving or delivering food, or someone has extra zucchini in their garden, or if they can afford to donate some money to any of these organizations. I just think we all have to work together. We're smarter and wiser than we were the first time.
Hello. On the Rob Snow Show. The phone lines are open at 613-750-1310.
Now, the Rob Snow Show continues.
Federal government vaccine mandate for its employees, many of whom call Ottawa home. Is it good enough? Does it go too far? Or does it not go far enough? At 750-1310, 750-1310. Maggie in Ottawa, good morning. You're on City News.
Oh, good morning, Rob. How are you doing today?
I'm great. Thank you.
I think it's going way, way too far. Vaccination's supposed to be voluntary in Canada, right? And even if the government attempts to mandate it, there's no law. It's a violation of human rights and international agreements. And basically, the government is unlawfully practicing medicine by facilitating, enforcing, or actually using coercion to insist employees submit to this experimental gene therapy. And Canadian law has
experimental gene therapy. What are you talking about? Experimental gene?
It's considered an experimental gene therapy.
Experimental gene therapy. Yeah. I've heard a lot of crazy things. That's the latest crazy thing, I guess.
No, it's been considered that. And Canadian law...
Considered that by who? Considered that by who?
By many doctors.
By many doctors.
Many doctors,
okay.
yeah.
Right.
There's, that's the problem here. So many doctors are not even being allowed to, get on the news or even talk about anything around this. We don't hear about the negative side effects. We don't hear about the fact right now that they talk a lot about medical exemptions in the country,
right,
but it's almost impossible to get one because the colleges are telling doctors that if you even give someone a medical exemption, you potentially can lose your license. So it's like every time someone turns around to try to help their client, or say somebody with immunosuppressant issues.
Well, I know there was an issue with one doctor who got in some hot water with the College of Physicians, but he was accused of basically giving anybody who wanted a medical exemption, which is kind of like a medical exemption farm. Like, if you're going to give a medical exemption, shouldn't it be for a legitimate medical reason?
I'm not saying, to go overboard on that. We need some balance. But like, for example, we never hear of Dr. Byron Bridle. He's a pro-vaccine professor of viral immunology at the University of Guelph. And he's really talking about the potential harms now and what he calls experimental treatments. And so we have to ask ourselves, too, like, why are some people vax hesitant? They're not all anti-vaxxers. They are looking and they are doing their own research. And they're finding, for example, the spike protein is considered a pathogenic protein. We're hearing about the blood clot.
I gotta go. There's only so much I can take. Okay? There's only so much craziness one person should be asked to endure in an hour. And I have just about reached my quota. Thank you very much. Greg Enbrin.
Hey,
yeah.
Last caller actually kind of really helped my point, and it's going to be
I'm going to let you go too then. Sam in Orleans. Sam, you're on City News. Sam. I mean, Sam. Good morning, Sam.
Hi there.
Yeah.
Good morning. How are you doing today?
I'm hanging in there, Sam. Yeah. Doing my best.
Good. Listen, I'm going to try to bring some balance to this. I think the government isn't going far enough. And
Not
here's
far
my
enough.
reason.
Okay. All right.
I believe that anybody who doesn't get vaccinated now is showing wanton and reckless disregard for the safety of others and is therefore guilty of criminal negligence. And if a variant emerges because that is more dangerous, because this virus is lingering around when it could be eliminated by and large, then those people could potentially be charged for criminal negligence. And I think the social media, which is has been subjected to this morning, when the body of scientific weight and medicine is behind the vaccinations, those social media outlets need to be prosecuted primarily. There's my...
Okay. All right. Okay, Sam. Sam, go after the social media companies for their misinformation, disinformation. Okay, not really my question. Okay, not really my question. There is a vaccine mandate about to be imposed by the federal government for its workforce, for the core public service. Now it says it wants to expand it and include the broader public service. Based on what you know, and we heard it yesterday, we aired the news conference live here during the Rob Snow Show. It's, I promise I'm fully vaccinated. My question is that good enough? I can tell you a lot of private sector employers are going a lot further than that with their own employees. They are saying, you are not stepping foot into this workplace unless you show me your proof of vaccination. I'm not keeping you on my payroll. But the federal government is, I promise I'm fully vaccinated. And they say later on, managers will be able to ask you if you're fully vaccinated and all the departments will be audited at some point. Does that go far enough? Or does it go too far? Or is it like the Goldilocks of vaccine mandates, okay? And it's just, it's just right. Kate in Ottawa. Kate, you're on City News.
Hi, good morning.
Hi, Kate.
I think it goes way too far.
Way too far.
And
I knew you were going to say that. I knew you were going to say that.
Yeah, and my question would be, when is it going to end? Are we going to have to show proof of vaccination every 6 months? Because the manufacturer, Pfizer, is saying that it has to be, that their vaccine loses efficacy after 6 months. So is this going to be a continued thing? And then are they going to, I know that.
So what if it is? What if it is? What if it is? What if it is?
So we're going to be subjected to be injected every 6 months, and they're actually working on a vaccine to mix the COVID and the flu vaccine together. So now you're actually forcing people to have the flu vaccine, which most people, a lot of people don't want to get in the first place. I'm not an anti-vaxxer, but I am COVID hesitant vaxxer, but I will tell you that I did make an appointment today to get my vaccine at 2:00, based on coercion, but I am getting it done. And I noticed that now you do not have the choice of what vaccine you can get, and that you could possibly, for your second dose, have a mixed. So it's
lots of people have mixed doses. Lots of people have mixed doses.
I don't care that.
My wife has a mixed dose.
Good for her. You have a mixed vax too, don't you?
No, I don't. I have 2 shots of AstraZeneca vaccine myself. Yeah.
Oh, you can't travel then.
Well, a lot of people aren't going to be able to travel. Millions of Canadians, unless they get this sorted out, won't be able to travel. Because because of whether with AstraZeneca, it's not approved in some places, and in other countries don't recognize people have 2 different doses. So
yeah, exactly. So so if I go and get a Pfizer and then I go and I'm forced to get a Moderna just so that I can keep my job, I still won't be able to travel.
Right. Okay.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, it's wrong.
It's wrong. Okay, I know, Kate. I know. Look. We've talked a lot about this, you and me, over this last year. We don't see eye to eye, but I thank you for your call. I really do. I appreciate your point of view. I disagree with it almost in its entirety, but I appreciate your call and your point of view. A lot of people share your point of view. I don't. I think it is your civic duty to be vaccinated. Patrick in Kingston. And I think it's selfish if you're not getting vaccinated. I think it's an act of total selfishness. Patrick in Kingston. Go ahead, Patrick.
Hi, Rob.
Yeah.
Always great show.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think your question is quite specific. So I would say, though, I think it didn't go too far if they really mean like the private sector does. But I think with the government, it goes in the same time a little bit too far. Because if you read what they sent to the staff today or yesterday, I guess, they're saying basically, many public servants work remotely. They're supposed to work in Ottawa, but in another province. So essentially they're saying
Even if you work remotely, yes.
Yeah, you will never set foot in the office. You have to be fully vaccinated or fired. So that's where the too far goes. It becomes almost illogical because it clearly has nothing to do with safety at the workplace.
Safety in the workplace, yeah.
So it becomes strictly coercion, nothing else. They say, like we saw with the nurses and the other doctors, they're frontline heroes and then battling COVID, but then the short staff overworked. But when they didn't want the vaccine mandate, they became anti-vaxxers and fired. So I think that optic is not good. But if they want to make it like in the private sector, then they should require proof. So I think that's both sides of the story.
All right, Patrick. Great points, sir. Great points. Great points. A lot of people are picking up on the remote work, which kind of a valid point, I think, because I think longer term, we know that Treasury Board is seriously thinking about making this a more permanent thing, remote work for the federal public service. Not just because of the cost savings of all the real estate, but because of the greenhouse gas footprint of owning all that federal government real estate, that maybe it's environmentally friendlier to have a workforce that works remotely as it tries to get, to this ambitious goal of net zero by 2050 or what have you. So if somebody is working from home now and is going to work from home for the next 25 years, why do they need to be vaccinated? I can appreciate that point of view. 1028, still get vaccinated, though. 1028, Rob Snow Show, City News Talkback Hour, 750-1310.
in Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News, now on 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
It's Thursday, October 7th. Good morning. I'm Andrew Boyle. Right now in Ottawa and in Smiths Falls, 13 degrees, and here's what's making news this hour. It's another day back over 500 cases of COVID in Ontario today as the province reports 587 new cases along with 5 additional deaths. Now, the Test numbers come from 37,000 cases, 1.7% of them coming back positive. 32 of these cases are in Ottawa, 24 in Eastern Ontario, 5 more cases of COVID in Leeds, Grenville, Lanark. There are 2 more cases in Renfrew. A small crowd marked 1 year since the death of Anthony Oust. He was a 23-year-old man who fell to his death from the 12th floor of an apartment building on Jasmine Crescent. The group demanding 5 changes in particular after Oust's death during a police no-knock raid. They include the City of Ottawa purging all policies and practices they say that target all oppressed and colonized people. Ontario's Chief Medical Officer of Health set to release his advice today for safely celebrating Thanksgiving and Halloween coming up in just over 3 weeks. Dr. Kieran Moore has already said celebrating indoors and unmasked with a fully vaccinated group this weekend is absolutely appropriate. Ontario gathering limits are still in effect. That's 100 people outdoors, 25 people indoors. City News Time, 10:32. I'm Andrew Boyle. For news anytime. Follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
It's time to talk back.
On the Rob Snow Show.
Have your say and call now.
613-750-1310.
Talk back hour. Second day of gathering reaction to the Trudeau government's vaccine mandate for the federal government workforce. Good enough? Goes too far? Doesn't go far enough? What do you think? What's your opinion? The unions are not happy with this policy at all, and they're not happy at the municipal level either. They're not happy with the municipal level either, whether there's a similar policy. We're actually going to have Clint Crabtree on from the Amalgamated Transit Union a little bit later. It's filed a grievance about the City of Ottawa's policy. But at the federal level, PSAC issued a statement and said the government rushed this vaccination policy without any meaningful consultation with federal unions. We were given less than a single business day to provide feedback on their policy, and when we did, they failed to incorporate it in any of their changes into the final policy. So I think you can count on PSAC challenging this as well. And that's kind of more or less where we are on the federal government's vaccine mandate. You have to promise that you've been vaccinated. And if your boss finds out that you lied, it's unpaid leave, maybe worse than that. Maybe you're fired. That's the cover of the Sun today. You're fired. The guy walking out with a cardboard box full of personal belongings. Public service must get the jab. Ontario tells long-term care workers, get vaxxed or get lost. Get vaxxed or get lost. Okay? Maybe you don't even qualify for severance or EI. And some people will think, well, you know what? Them's the breaks. 750-1310, 750-1310. Right back to it in Smiths Falls. Logan, you're on City News. Good morning, Logan.
Good morning, Rob. How are you doing?
I'm hanging in there, buddy. Just fine. Thank you. Loving the weather.
Good. I just wanted to hop on and just say I'm totally for the mandate. I don't know how thrilled I am about the whole pinky swear way that they're going about it, but if it works, it works.
Right.
Another thing to consider is, I mean, you don't have a right to work at the job that you work at. You know, everybody's saying, oh, it's illegal. It's all coercive tactics. It's like, you have a right to work. Everybody's got a right to work. But, I mean, the job that you currently work, like I'm currently delivering mail right now, and there's no law, I don't think, about taking 2 pieces of bread and a couple of these letters and putting them between the two and just chowing down. But I'd get fired if I did that. So, I mean, just go and get the jab, and it doesn't seem that, I don't feel like it's that big of an issue.
All right. Thank you, Logan. Not that big of an issue. Okay. Good. Well, I mean, for some people, it's the hill they're going to die on by the sounds of it. Dunrobin, Andrew, you're on City News. Good morning.
Yeah, good morning, Rob. Thank you for just taking my call.
Sure.
I got to tell you, I got my blood boiling. I needed to get off the scaffolding or I was going to throw something off. I meant to call yesterday. So I really don't agree when the government is mandating people that they need to take a certain vaccine, that they need to inject something in their bodies. And it's not the science that I'm upset about. It's the way that we have been preached at. Fingers, just waddled at us like we were 4-year-olds. And I understand that the science will change, that we know more about this than we did 6 years ago, it's just a way that they've been preaching down to us. And when they've made mistakes, and God knows that they have made a lot, nobody has stepped up to apologize and say, yes, we've made a mistake. We apologize to you. Let's move on and let's explain things. And to listen to Trudeau, the guy who probably tells more lies before noon than you and I will in 1 year.
Okay.
It just doesn't go down well with me. So I myself have gotten the vaccine. I didn't go to get the vaccine with the lollipop and skipping down there, but it is my responsibility. But I do not want to live in a society where we are dividing people. We should be uniting people, explaining them, sitting down. Like this disease, if it were to take, 15% of the people, or 10 or 7 or 5, then I would be there saying, yes, please get the vaccine. We need this. But the numbers, we are not burying people in mass graves. So, no, I do not agree.
Well, okay. All right, Andrew. All right. Well, I mean, look at maybe we're doing better here in Ontario, but I mean, look at the situation in Alberta, sir.
Yes.
All right. Once again, cancer surgeries being delayed. Important medical procedures are being delayed for people. Totally burnt out healthcare workers dealing with all of this because people refuse to be vaccinated, and they've flooded the healthcare system again. Right.
I agree with you, Rob. And once again, the government there had made a mistake.
Right.
But just talk to us like we're grown-ups.
Okay. All right. Talk to us like we're grown. Okay. Thank you. Look, I'll get back to the calls in just a second, but as we've been mentioning, the legislature's back this week, and that means the Ontario question period is held every morning around this time. Doug Ford is in the legislature. He was there yesterday, too, and him and Andrea Horvath are kind of going at it right now. Give us a little
that the government
taste of this, okay?
has their backs. In fact, here is what
the
union representing the frontline workers, the frontline PSWs say, and it's SEIU Healthcare, and I quote, absent in yesterday's announcement is any action to improve the abhorrent conditions of work that still exist in Ontario's long-term care homes, the time to stop protecting the greedy interests of the big nursing home chains who simply want more discretionary spending should have ended long ago. I agree wholeheartedly with these remarks, Speaker.
Question?
The question to the Premier is, when will he actually say yes to PSWs, give them that permanent pay raise instead of boosting profits for his buddies that run long-term care homes?
To reply, the Minister of Long-Term Care.
Mr. Speaker, I don't know why the Leader of the Opposition won't take yes for an answer. I think the Premier was clear, but she wants to quote some union leaders, so let me do that for her. This is Jerry Dias, President of Unifor. You may have heard of him. The Minister's announcement is a step in the right direction, helping long-term care workers provide residents with adequate care they deserve. This announcement moves us closer to achieving the minimum of 4 hours of care. That's from Naveen Reezy, the Regional Director of Unifor. We're encouraged. Now, this is Candace Rennick. She's the Secretary-Treasurer of CUPE in Ontario. You know them. We're encouraged to learn that this government is finally taking the necessary steps to enshrine 4 hours of care in commitment into legislation. This is an important and long-awaited step. We will look for the Leader of the Opposition's support for that part of the bill to come. And finally, it is crucial that the government acts fast to ensure the safety of our most vulnerable citizens and the frontline heroes. We are glad to finally see a government that is following up on its words and doing something that Smokey Thomas, the President of OPSU. Mr. Speaker.
Rob Phillips is the long-term care minister now. He replaced Marilee Fullerton, Dr. Fullerton from the Canada area. He's hard to recognize sometimes because he's not sitting next to the fireplace sipping on eggnog. I understand that. If you're needed. I know, it's mean, right? It's mean. All right, back to the phones on the federal government's vaccine mandate. That was our little brief interlude there. Rob in Rockcliffe. Good morning, Rob.
Good morning, Rob. How are you?
Hanging in there, sir. Hanging in there. Yep.
I think that they've gone far enough.
Okay.
Except for one thing. The attestation is a joke.
Okay, all right.
If I have to go on an airplane, I have to show proof of vaccination.
Sure, yeah.
So my vaccine certificate, whatever it is.
Whatever, yeah.
But if a but I can go to work by saying, I promise I got the vaccine. That's no good. That's making the federal public servants better than me. and they're not.
Okay.
I don't understand it, but there's something political happening for sure. It's all political. Are they going to make all the MPs show proof of vaccination? Is that the next step?
Well, yeah, I guess we'll see what happens with that.
Are they going to try and wedge the Conservatives on this? Is that the plan?
Well, that's I think that's certainly politically part of the plan, and you can see why it is a wedge issue, Rob. I mean, if you listen to this talkback hour for the last 2 days, you see how divisive it is, right? So
I'm not against vaccination.
No,
I'm just saying if you're going to do it,
go all the way. Yeah, and
don't mess around. So the next thing you know, they're going to say, okay, the Liberals, the NDP, the Bloc, they're all going to say, well, we're going to have all of our members attest that they've been vaccinated.
Yeah.
That'll be the next thing.
Yeah.
And what they're going to do is they're going to try and get the Conservatives on this issue. No doubt in my mind. No doubt.
All right, Rob, thank you. Thank you for your call, sir. Yep, good to hear from you. It doesn't go as far as a lot of private sector employers and other employers. Doesn't go as far as the City of Ottawa's policy. With the attestation, a lot of employers are saying, we want to see your receipt that you have been vaccinated. Not this, I promise I've been vaccinated stuff. Dave Prescott. Dave.
Hi, I'm totally against this. I can't believe what they're doing, and they're getting away with it.
Okay.
If I can use an example, like most people have, say, an electric drill or maybe even an umbrella. And it's not that they want electric drills or umbrellas. They want to make holes in things or put screws in wood, or they have an umbrella so they can be protected from the rain. This vaccine, they're saying, is the only way we can do that. What about natural immunization? What about someone who's survived the virus themselves? The other thing you can do, say, is wear a raincoat. There's more than one way to protect the public from this virus, but they're saying the only way that they're going to allow is the vaccine.
So you think there should be some kind of accommodation, like a masking testing regime maybe instead, right? Right?
There should be other methods.
Other methods, yeah.
I'm not a technical person, but same as when you have an umbrella or a raincoat or even galoshes, that'll help you from getting wet.
I got you.
There's more than one for the vaccine.
Okay, thank you. But yeah, more, accommodations could be made for people who, for one reason or another, I believe was how Treasury Board put it before, for one reason or another, are not vaccinated. Accommodations can be made. We'll be right back with the final quarter. Some phone lines available there. Talkback Hour, Rob Snow Show on City News.
When you've lost your breasts, you've sort of lost part of yourself. And then all at once, you're losing your hair. You don't know who you are anymore. You want to feel like yourself again. So I think that the store, a mastectomy store, is essential because you've lost your identity. And then all at once, you're looking for a wig, you need a headscarf, you need a camisole. There's nowhere to go. There's no one to talk to. This should be essential because there are more and more women that are getting breast cancer. I think it's 1 in 6. They're becoming younger. I have a client that's 18 years old. And where do they go? They need a place like this that the women that work there understand. They know what you're going through. It's changed quite a bit. Our hours are different. We're now open from 10 to 5. We're not as busy as we were. A lot of women are afraid to go out. They're afraid that maybe there are more people in the store. So that's why I try and let them know you are alone. There's absolutely nobody in the store except you and I. If there is a woman that she's very afraid, I will lock the door to make sure nobody else comes in. I'll put a sign back in 10, 15 minutes just to give her that reassurance. Before we would have 4, 5, 6 people in the store. We didn't have to turn anybody away. Now we do. Some clients do leave and they're upset because they're in the store. They said, you know, we drove 20 minutes and now we're not allowed in the store. And I try to make them understand that there's somebody in here that's going through chemo or radiation. So that sort of changed a lot, that we're not able to have more people in the store.
If we're talking about products, there's the bras that are adapted for mastectomy, the bathing suits that are adapted to mastectomy. We have special camisoles as well, and post-surgery bras. And then we have, for women going through chemo, the wigs that we have a big selection in the store as well. We have scarves. Some women don't feel comfortable wearing a wig. They prefer to wear a scarf or a hat, so we have a huge selection of that as well. We offer compression garments as well. When you're going through a mastectomy, you might have lymphedema in your arms after a couple of years, and you have flare-ups. So we have the sleeves, the hand as well that can be covered. We show each other's our scar. We talk about the treatments, how we felt, and I guess that's what they're looking for here. That's what makes us special. We have an added value in this store. Besides everything that's in the store, that's a product that can handle any problem that a client might have. Me and Linda, we've been through. We know how it feels in our bodies.
At 613-750-1310.
Now, the Rob Snow Show continues.
Final quarter of the Talk Back Hour on the Rob Snow Show. We're talking vaccine mandates from the federal government. Announced yesterday during a news conference in the 11 o'clock hour by the Prime Minister and Chrystia Freeland, the Finance Minister, and it was a weird news conference. It was a weird news conference, right, David?
It
strange. It was just had a weird vibe to it.
Very weird energy.
This is just a little aside. Allow me, if you will, okay? The Prime Minister's announcement on vaccine mandates yesterday during his 11 o'clock news conference. I don't know. Maybe I'm way off track, okay? I could be totally wrong. It just had a crazy vibe about it. The Prime Minister is the head of the government. He is the top dog. That's where the buck stops. He's the Prime Minister, okay? Runs the show, calls the shots. And you have this big announcement that you want to make. Hot issue during the election campaign. You used it to maximum effect as a wedge issue against your main political opponent, the Conservative leader. Vaccine mandates. You said you're going to do it. Now you've called the media together and you're going to announce that you're going to do it. And the big announcement comes and the press gallery is there and there's live coverage on the cable news networks, and Rob Snow is giving you the airtime on his show on City News in Ottawa. And what do? You hand things off to the Deputy Prime Minister, the Minister of Finance. What? And don't get me wrong, Chrystia Freeland's very capable, okay? I've called her the Minister of Everything, okay? She's the Minister of Everything in this government. They're, as much as they seem lost sometimes, they're even more lost without her. Sometimes I wonder if she's the only grown-up in the room. I just thought it was kind of odd that she's the one making the announcement. The federal workforce is not even her portfolio. It's like Treasury Board. The president of the Treasury Board should be making that announcement, if anybody, if you're going to pass it off to a cabinet minister. And she spoke at length about the policy in both languages, what it is, why they're doing it. It was quite some time before we actually heard from the Prime Minister, and when we did, he basically just repeated everything she just said. Odd. I'm telling you, it was odd. And again, maybe I'm reading too much into this, okay? The Prime Minister seemed off to me yesterday. I said to David, he looks sullen. He looks sullen. No passion. To me, it was like he was just kind of going through the motions. That There were 100 places he would rather be than in that room yesterday. Because he just seemed to let Chrystia Freeland handle most of it. He did admit it was his mistake going on a holiday to Tofino on the very first National Day of Truth and Reconciliation. He admitted that was a mistake and that he needs to do better. Fair enough, right? We all make mistakes. I've had some doozies in my life. He never explained his reasoning, though, behind that vacation, the decision to go to Tofino. He was asked about it by the English and French media, but he refused to get into any kind of detail. And he usually handles himself better during a news conference. I mean, not answering questions is kind of par for the course, nothing new, but he usually has some zing, some pep. Sometimes he even smiles, even after the reporter hammers him. He usually smiles at them, but yesterday he seemed kind of off. I'm not a mind reader or an expert in body language, but and maybe it was totally different if you were in the room. Who knows? But he's turning 50 this year, and that's I turned 50 this year, and that is a time when men ponder our future, where we have been and what we have done and what we would like to do. But again, maybe I'm reading too much into it. Maybe there's nothing to it, any of it. Irene in Ottawa. Thank you for waiting, Irene.
Okay, I have a quick question, Rob, and I'm hoping you can help me out.
Well, I'll try my best. As long as it's not about spike proteins, I'll give it my best shot.
No. Rob, OC Transit, did they go over to Quebec?
OC Transpo goes to Quebec, yeah.
Okay, the reason I'm saying that is a couple of years back when there was a collective agreement, there was something about driver hours, and it was federal because they went
Yes,
to
federally regulated. That's why they said something, I remember back-to-work legislation. If they wanted to do back-to-work legislation, it had to be passed in Parliament because it's federally regulated because it crosses the bridge.
So do people have to show, because it's under federal, do people have to show they're vaccinated when they get on the bus? Because
Not as far as I know.
But Trudeau says when you get on anything under the federal, like the train and the plane.
That's a good point. Yeah.
I thought, what the heck, eh? I mean, no one is even kind of thought.
That's a very good point that you raised. Yeah.
And this other thing about the testation papers.
Yes, I promise I'm vaccinated. Yeah.
I think that's just to appease the union.
Okay. Well, they're not very appeased by the sounds.
No. But I mean, what are the odds that they're going to be asked to show proof?
I don't know.
And the other thing, I noticed yesterday when they interviewed a civil servant, and says, this guy says, well, maybe I'll just have to retire. Well, you know what? If he retires, he can't travel anywhere.
Right.
He can't eat in a restaurant. Why are you going to retire? You can't do anything.
What are you going to do anyway, right? Okay, right? Irene.
Gotcha. Still under the restrictions.
Sure thing.
But anyway, I just thought I'd throw that out there.
All right, Irene. Thank you. Yep. Bye-bye. That's a good point, though. Okay, because they are regulating interprovincial rail, but we have interprovincial bus, OC Transpo. Quebec buses come over here. Our buses go over there. They'll have to put that language, if they're actually drawing up legislation, they'll have to put language in there that deals with that, you would think. On the Gatineau side, Fran, you're on City News, Fran.
Hi. I'm disagreement with what's going on.
Okay.
I think he did it the wrong way.
All right.
The people that are working from home should be exempt.
Okay.
And also, if he wants this, how come he didn't give them time enough to get the damn shot?
What do you mean time enough to get the shot? Come on, they've been doing shots since February. They've been doing shots since February.
He's saying this now, so he should give them time enough now for another.
Fran, you're making some good points, Fran, but we've been swimming in vaccinations here since April, May in this country. There's no excuse for anybody not to be vaccinated now.
Well, I sort of disagree with you. He should be given
you can disagree with me, but
but to get it.
we can disagree. I'm not going to be disagreeable, but the fact is, it's been fairly easy to get a vaccine in this city since April, May, I would say. Westboro, Helen. Good morning, Helen.
Good morning.
Morning.
First of all, I agree with your comment about the
news conference
yesterday. My goodness.
Strange vibe to it, right? Yeah.
Very much so. So I think his walk in the sand will be like his father's walk in the snow, and he's looking to promote Christopher Freeland.
Right. Okay.
Anyway, with regard to being vaccinated, I've had both shots. I'm probably going to have to get the second one pretty soon, or the third one pretty soon, because my second one was in June.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you qualify for one of these booster shots, do you?
I do, because I'm going to be 80 this year.
Oh,
so.
okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And yes, men of 50, they still do think a lot. They're not thinking of me, though.
Okay. All right, Helen. Well, that's a big round number for you, too. 80. Wow. Congratulations when that happens.
That.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you, Helen. Yeah.
Now, I just think that Trudeau is trying to coerce more people to get vaccinated, because the people that are working from home, they're safe, they're
right.
Not... So I think that...
They're not a risk in an office tower, right?
Right.
A plastiportage or something like that.
Yeah. But I do have a question. Mind is, if we're supposed to be protected if we're vaccinated, then why are we so worried about people that are not vaccinated? I know there's a small chance of getting COVID from getting COVID again once you've been vaccinated, but I just don't understand that. And I think they should have done a much better job of explaining things yesterday, and that really they do want more people vaccinated. And I agree with that. I don't know why people don't get vaccinated. All my family is vaccinated, including my great-grandchildren that are old enough to be. So.
All right, Helen. Thank you for your call, Helen. We got to run here. Always good to hear from you. Now, that's all the time we have. But, hey, tomorrow's wide open, right? Friday free-for-all tomorrow before the long weekend. So take advantage of that platform tomorrow if you haven't had a chance to get on in the last 2 days, by all means. Coming up after the 11 o'clock news, we will talk about the housing market. And in addition to that, the president of the Amalgamated Transit Union, Local 279, on the City of Ottawa's mandatory vaccination policy. This is City News.
Smith Falls and the Valley. Number 1 for local news in Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News, now on 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
It's Thursday, October 7th. Good morning. I'm Andrew Boyle. Right now in Ottawa and in Smith Falls, 13 degrees, and here's what's making news right now. Province is reporting 587 new cases of COVID-19 today, along with 5 additional deaths. Now, these numbers come from over 37,000 tests that were completed, positive rate at 1.7%. 32 of these new cases are in Ottawa, 24 in Eastern Ontario. There are 5 more cases in Leeds, Grenville, Lanark, and 2 in Renfrew. Now, Pfizer Canada says it is preparing to ask Health Canada to authorize its COVID-19 vaccine for children between the ages of 5 and 11. They plan to do this by mid-month. The pharmaceutical giant has submitted a formal request today asking the American government to allow its use of COVID-19 vaccine in that age group. If the regulators agree, shots could begin south of the border just within a matter of weeks. The dose for younger children is about 1/3 the size given to adults. City News time 11:02. Now your forecast with meteorologist Jill Taylor.
Any fog will dissipate. We're very mild. Our high 21 degrees today with sun and cloud. The average high just 14. Tonight mainly clear and 9, and tomorrow sunshine 21 degrees. That's the high today, 21.
And right now 13 degrees in Ottawa and in Smith Falls. It was a small crowd that marked 1 year since the death of Anthony Oust. He was a 23-year-old man who fell to his death from the 12th floor of the apartment building he lived in on Jasmine Crescent. The group demanding 5 changes in particular after his death, during which police had a no-knock raid. Now, these demands include the City of Ottawa purge all policies and practices, they say, that targets the oppressed and the colonized people. We'll have more throughout the afternoon with Perushka Gobolkista. The NHL has announced the Montreal Canadiens netminder Carey Price is going to be away from the team for an undisclosed period of time. He is voluntarily taking part in the NHL-NHLPA assistance program. Price's return to the lineup was in question for the start of the season after undergoing off-season surgery. This issue, a different matter. The league and the Players Association not offering any more comment, but the Montreal Canadiens general manager Marc Bergevin is expected to address the media later on this afternoon. The U.S. Coast Guard has boarded a massive cargo ship. It's investigating the rupture of an offshore oil pipeline that sent crude washing up on South California beaches. They want to know whether the ship's anchor might have snagged and bent this pipe off Huntington Beach. The Associated Press reviewed tracking data from marine traffic appearing to show this German-flagged vessel made 3 unusual movements over 2 days that appeared to put it over the pipeline. Both Marine Traffic, though, and Hapag-Lloyd, the company that operates the ship, now say that GPS location data was simply wrong. I'm Andrew Boyle for News Anytime. Follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
He's a pillar of community opinion.
The Rob Snow Show returns
On Rogers TV and City News.
101.1 FM
and 1310 AM.
Hey, let's talk about the Ottawa housing market. The Ottawa Real Estate Board said last month was a normal month for real estate activity in Ottawa. What does that mean? Frank Napolitano is back from Mortgage Brokers Ottawa. Good morning.
Good morning.
Hey, how are you?
I'm well, thanks. You?
Yeah, good. How's business, Frank?
Business is still good.
Good.
Certainly not the crazy numbers and the craziness we experienced for about 4 or 5 months earlier this year, but normal seems to be a good word.
Normal. Okay. Well, what does normal mean? Because it seems to me it seems the same old. Prices continue to climb in Ottawa. It's still a very, very strong market, it seems to me.
No question, year over year, the numbers have risen, but obviously most of that happened over a 6 to 8 month period earlier on this year and the latter part of last year. But over the last 2 or 3 months, we've seen a stabilization in the real estate market. We've seen mortgage rates go up slightly over the past week or so, but again, very slight increase. So overall, it's what we would expect in a normal market. And, it's encouraging to see buyers come back out now and be able to make offers on properties and have a night to sleep on it. They don't have to make a decision while they're sitting in their car after they viewed the property, and being able to make offers in many cases that are either under or about the list price, along with the financing and the home inspection clause.
Okay. So when we would talk in months past, we would talk about bidding wars, for example. Like you said, I'll take no conditions. You don't even have to inspect the place, right? Which is like, holy cow. You're like, don't be doing that. But anyway, that was kind of, par for the course. Bidding wars, still on?
In certain neighborhoods, you'll start to see that there'll be some bidding wars from time to time. But, an example is there was a townhouse listed in Stonebridge that one of my clients was interested in. And speaking to the realtor indicated the house had been on the market for 3 weeks and quite a few showings, but no offers. And all of a sudden, so he said, Frank, I'm going to put my client an offer in from a financing standpoint. He said, from a financing standpoint, I'd like if there was a financing clause only because the income, there's variable income with this client, and they're buying it with less than 20% down, which means that CMHC/default insurer is involved. And the default insurer never does pre-approvals. They only want to look at a file when there's an actual purchase agreement attached to it. So lo and behold, the same day that this individual is about to put an offer, 3 other offers show up, and all of a sudden it becomes a bidding war. And unfortunately, my client lost out on it because because it ended up going $30,000 over list price. But it sat for 3 weeks, and I think what the real estate agent did is reached out to anybody that saw it and said, hey, I've got an offer coming in, so if you're really interested in this property, you may not be able to sit tight anymore. You may have to put your best foot forward, and that's what happened.
Okay. So just based on what you're hearing out there, in terms of the kind of like the supply-demand equation right now, when we would talk in previous months, Frank, you were talking about like really tight on the supply side, really tight with listings, just too many buyers chasing too few homes. Is that starting to balance out a little bit now, or is it still a fairly tight market when it comes to Ottawa?
Well, it feels like it's balancing out, but the truth is that, I believe we still have a supply issue. It's just that the demand has waned a little bit over the last 3 or 4 months. So on a turn, it could change over again, and all of a sudden we're back to where we were 3, 4, 5 months ago. But, I think, and again, part of the election, historically, when there's a national election, the city of Ottawa real estate transactions go down a little bit. Now we're 2 or 3 weeks past the election, and according to some real estate agents, they're starting to see some activity start to come back. It was a pretty quiet July, August, September, and for multiple reasons. I think the fact that we opened up, I think that a lot of buyers got frustrated with what they were experiencing, and they just needed some time off. I think there's numerous reasons why that happened, but there is some agents that feel like, I don't think we're going to get back to the craziness we saw earlier on this year. But I still think that there's a supply issue. It's just the demand is not quite there yet, but that demand could come back real quickly, especially if we start to open up immigration and Ottawa is a destination for immigrants to come to.
Gosh, they can't build the condos fast enough. I tell you what. There's another application now. I should say this was circulating on Twitter yesterday. You know where the Icon is, that building at Carling and Preston. Right, the Claridge building, the Icon, right?
Yeah,
big
so
building,
right up the street, on Bronson.
There's going to be another building. There was just an application, another building where the CIBC branch is just across the street. There's a CIBC bank there. That a building is being proposed that would be taller than the Icon. It would be the tallest building in Ottawa. 60 stories. 60 stories.
Wow.
But I was talking to somebody yesterday who actually has a unit in the Icon. I think they're moving. People starting to move in November into the Icon.
I don't think they're sold out, though. Are they sold out?
No, but it's sold very well. It has sold very well, though. It has sold very well. And the one across the street, if it ever gets the go-ahead, who knows, 10 years from now, would be 460 units in there. So, I mean, the developers are not building these without having buyers if they don't think they can sell the units. And it just, look across the skyline, Frank. I mean, cranes everywhere, right? The condo market it seems to be doing okay. What's your sense of it?
Well, that's my sense as well. And I think that, for some first-time home buyers, the condo might be the entry point now. Where it used to be a townhouse, the condo might be that entry point. Now, depends on how they price these condos. The Icon was priced pretty high, I thought. Yeah. Depends on how they price the one. There's also another one that I
asked yesterday, and they said starting at something like $550 or something in there around there.
Yes, that's pretty high. I mean, at $550, you could almost get a townhouse. I would say that's not going to be for first-time home buyers. These are first-time home buyers looking to get in at a lesser price. If you can get a townhouse for $650 without a $500 or $600 a month condo fee, then you're better off to buy a townhouse than you are to buy a condo at $550,000. But again, it depends on your lifestyle. But it'll be easier from a qualifying standpoint to get into a townhouse at $650 than it would be a condo at $550 with condo fees. But there's another proposal, I think, just up the street from that on Bronson and Carling Avenue as well for another, I believe it was 25 or 30
26,
story building
26 stories.
Yeah,
26.
So wow, I mean, that's a lot of building. And I can tell you from my personal experience, I happened to go to Vancouver the third week of August, and the skyline there is full of cranes. And we all know how expensive Vancouver is. Yeah. And I happened to stop and talk to one of the property managers there. And he said that building's already sold out and it won't be ready for another 18 months. Wow. And all units are sold already. So the demand is there.
Well, every now and then there's a story in the news, Frank, about blind bidding. And this idea, we should get rid of blind bidding in real estate. What's your take on that, Frank?
I'm hit and miss on it. And I'll tell you the part that I don't like about the blind bidding. The blind bidding, and we saw it a lot at the beginning of this year, where, if you put an offer in, the real estate agents would come back to you and say, you're in the top 3. So if you want to sharpen your pencil, now's the time to do it. The problem I have with it is that if you're already number 1, so you've got the top bid, and the other 2 choose not to move theirs, and you're moving yours, you're outbidding yourself. And that's the part that I think is unfair to buyers. Great for the vendor, but unfair to buyers. So I'd like to see some hybrid in the middle somewhere where, the blind bidding's okay, but to a level where there's fairness in there. And but that would eliminate the blind bidding, right? So if you got told that the other person got above you, that's the only way that you should sweeten your offer. Otherwise, why should you sweeten your offer if you're already the top offer?
Okay. So I'm on your website now, mortgagebrokersottawa.com. Okay. 5-year closed, 2.24? 2.24?
2.24, and that's for so again, I mean, there's, I get a lot of customers that call me and say, what's your best 5-year rate? And I always say, well, it's not that easy. It used to be, here's the best 5-year rate. Today, the rates are based on your circumstances. So as crazy as it sounds, the less of a down payment you have, which means if you have less than 20% down, you're likely to get the best rate out there. And today, on a 5-year fixed, you can get 2.04% for a 5-year fixed if you were buying with less than 20% down. If you're buying with 20% down, it becomes a traditional, conventional mortgage. There's no default insurance. The rate is higher, and people say, well, that doesn't make sense. If you put a bigger down payment, the rate should be lower. Logically, it seems true, but the reason it's not is because from a financial institution standpoint, if they have a default insured mortgage, their risk is zero.
Zero risk, yeah. Zero risk. Yeah.
So therefore, they're willing to give you a premium for that and charge you a little bit less. Where with 20% down, even though the risk is still fairly minimal, at the end of the day, there's still a little bit of risk there. And at that point, they charge a little bit more, and that's where you see the 2.24 coming in.
Okay. What is this VRM closed? What's that, VRM closed?
Oh, variable rate mortgage. So variable rate mortgages are very popular still.
Yeah.
Again, I mean, you're looking at, on a high ratio, again, the same thing on the high ratio purchase, you can get as low as 1.1% below prime, and today's prime is 2.45. So you're looking at a 5-year variable rate mortgage of 1.35%. Wow. If it's a high ratio purchase. If it's a conventional purchase, it's still pretty good. You're at prime less 0.95, 1. So you're still at 1.45 to 1.5%. Now, convertible mortgage or variable rate mortgage is very good because it allows you the flexibility to be able to convert it to a fixed mortgage at any time throughout the term without any penalties. But at that point, you'll get whatever the rates are available at that time. So if you decide to convert to a 5-year mortgage or a year from now, and the 5-year rate's at 2.5, then that's the rate you would get for the next 5 years.
Okay. All right. Okay. Well, look, Frank, it's always so great to hear from you and get your take on the housing market. Everybody loves talking about the housing market, of course. So I really thank you and appreciate your time whenever you're on City News with us. Thanks again, eh?
Always a pleasure, and please continue to support local businesses and charities.
Yep. Frank Napolitano, Mortgage Brokers Ottawa. Their website, mortgagebrokersottawa.com. 11:17. The president of the Amalgamated Transit Union, Local 279, is going to join us, and we'll talk about vaccination mandates for city workers. When we come back, Rob Snow Show, City News.
Here at the Thirsty Maiden, we offer a variety of products. So everything from breakfast items, so it's breakfast sandwiches and scones, which have become a staple item here at the cafe. We have an assortment of pastries and cakes and desserts. So we're really big on our dessert bar, which a lot of people come here for. And of course, our delicious coffee beverages. So we do offer not your typical lattes, things like a chocolate banana coconut latte, cinnamon coconut, which is my favorite, and our take on even a pumpkin spice, which we add nutmeg and a dash of cayenne in just to give it a bit of a kick. When you start a business, you don't factor in all the things that could go wrong. You think anything that goes wrong, any failure, is got to be something on your shoulders. You didn't market right, you're carrying the wrong products, you didn't price your items correctly, all the things, right? But when this pandemic began, things going through my brain were I didn't factor in a pandemic. And we were just starting to grow. We were about to blow up, and I think I spent 2 days crying. And then I shut my business down for, I think, a period of 2 or 3 days. And just being at home during that time, I realized this is not me. Anybody that knows me knows I'm a hard worker. I don't give up, and I'm a go-getter. And I started to think, well, I should probably just start clearing out my freezers and posting and seeing who wants to buy what. And that was sort of how I built my momentum back up. I realized that there's still a large number of people that wanted to support us and were looking for the items that I had to provide. So we started there, then I reopened literally not even 3 or 4 days after I'd closed my doors, and then started doing curbside pickups and deliveries, started doing the deliveries myself, free deliveries to the local community, going as far as Bell's Corners and Carp as well. And that's why we're still here. This community has really kept us going a year into the pandemic. We've had a changeover of staff a couple times now, and situations change, and when you can't offer hours for your employees, you don't blame them when they have to go elsewhere. So I think that's also been one of the challenges is recruiting, training, and then they leave, and then bringing in more people and recruiting. And anybody in this industry will tell you that that's something we deal with on a regular basis, whether or not COVID's in the mix or not. But more so now, because every time there's a lockdown, there's a risk of, will we make it through? And then you lay off more staff. And again, their situations and their circumstances change.
Show returns
on Rogers TV and City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
So we learned yesterday that 4 local unions representing municipal workers have filed grievances over the City of Ottawa's mandatory vaccination policy. Under that policy, employees are required to provide their COVID-19 vaccination status and be fully vaccinated by the 1st of November, and those who do not will not be permitted in the workplace. They could be subject to consequences, leave without pay, maybe even dismissal. One of the unions that has filed a grievance is ATU Local 279, and Clint Crabtree joins us from the Amalgamated Transit Union, Local 279. Good morning, Mr. Crabtree.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
It's great to hear from you, sir. I thank you so much for the time. What is the union's opinion on the City of Ottawa's vaccination policy?
Well, I think they rolled out the policy. It's a change in the employment conditions of my members. And we had to file a grievance to protect the rights of our members who do not want to receive the vaccination for various reasons.
Okay. Such as, like, what rights, sir, for example?
Well, the rights are free choice. I mean, they have an employment contract with their employer.
Right.
We have a collective agreement. And now a new policy has come out that they have to be forced to receive a vaccination to continue their employment or continue to be paid. So as of November 1st, they will be on a leave of absence without pay. And I don't want to see any of my members have to endure that because of a forced vaccination.
Okay. How many people are members of ATU Local 279, Mr. Crabtree?
We're talking about 2,400 at OC Transpo, including Paratranspo.
2,400. Okay. And what is your sense of how many of the 2,400 are actually fully vaccinated? Do you have any idea? Or
I don't have a specific number, but if you go by the pure numbers that the province has put out, about 75 to 80% have been vaccinated. If you just do those numbers right there, that's a big enough number at OC Transpo that wouldn't be vaccinated members of ATU 279. That will definitely affect the service out there.
Oh, yeah.
Maintenance and bus operators.
Well, I mean, say it's 20%, right? Say it's 20%, you're probably maybe close to 500 members?
Correct.
Right.
Correct.
So if 500 members were put on leave, you're saying it would affect the operations, the day-to-day operations of OC Transpo?
Absolutely, without a doubt, it would affect the day-to-day operations, especially with the train being down right now, and there's additional service put out, R1 service. I mean, everybody's working and doing overtime to make up for that shortfall of the train.
Yeah, I want to ask you a little bit more about that, but not just yet. But would you say overall your members have been in favor of getting vaccinated? They want to be vaccinated. Would you say,
overall,
Mr. Crabtree?
Yes, I would.
Yeah.
At the start, when the vaccination was going to be readily available, I lobbied for vaccinations for my members and to be at the front of the line to receive it for the ones that did want to receive it. And that was a large number that did want to receive it. Now we have a number for various reasons that don't want to receive it. And as a union, we need to protect the rights of all our members.
Okay. So what is the process? You filed a grievance. What's the process? Is it an arbitration process or what is it?
Yeah, so we filed the grievance. Next week, we will be having a grievance hearing with the City of Ottawa. And if that grievance is upheld, they don't want to move on it, then we can seek a legal opinion and possibly go to arbitration, which would be an independent arbitrator would make a ruling on the grievance that we filed.
Okay. What would be acceptable instead of the city's current policy? For example, would masking, testing every few days, something like that be acceptable for your members, Mr. Crabtree?
I think testing would be a big step in the right direction, absolutely. I think that's something that could go a long way and appease both sides, but that is not in their policy, and that's not what they want to do. I think they're pretty firm on this policy, and there will be no movement.
Okay. What would you say to a public transit user who says, well, I want my bus driver to be fully vaccinated. I don't want to get on a bus unless my bus driver's fully vaccinated. Or I don't want to get on not that we can get on light rail right now, but I want to make sure the person who is operating my vehicle is fully vaccinated. What would you say to that person, Mr. Crabtree?
I would say that they have the right to their opinion, and the bus operators would also like to see the passengers fully vaccinated to get on their buses too. So there's a flip side to that. And that would be also something that would be nice, to see the passengers fully vaccinated if they're going to have to take the bus or use public transit if all my members are required to be fully vaccinated to continue employment, the public should be fully vaccinated to get on the buses.
Okay. Interesting perspective. We still have buses that go to Quebec, right, Mr. Crabtree? That go over to the Gatineau side?
Yes, we do.
Yes, we do. No, it's just very interesting because you're federally regulated, right? OC
We
Transfer.
are federally regulated.
Yeah. So do you know if you're covered by this federal announcement yesterday because you're a federally regulated industry?
They did not name public transit in that federal announcement. They basically named federal civil servants and not federally regulated, all federally regulated employees. So no, they did not name public transit.
Yeah, but it's interesting they're doing interprovincial rail, but not public transit. So
I found that very interesting and confusing.
Okay. I'm sure you're not alone in being confused. So on to this Sunday, it will be 3 weeks without light rail in the city of Ottawa. Remarkable. 3 weeks without light rail.
Correct.
R1, rushed into service again on an emergency basis. We know that there's, buses are in short supply. We've got to take from this route and put it on the R1 route. What does all of this mean for your members, Mr. Crabtree? What is the scramble like behind the scenes that we should know about as users of public?
There's a lot of work that goes into this to get this accomplished. I mean, we're trying to provide a service out to the public, and all of a sudden now you're throwing more buses on the road, and the maintenance personnel has to work more hours, overtime hours, to make this happen, and so do the bus operators to make sure that people are getting to where they want to go in this city. I mean, as soon as that train went down, R1 is in effect, and now people are having to work longer hours to get this done.
Okay. So is there more overtime being paid for OC Transpo right now, Mr.
There
Crabtree?
would absolutely be more overtime being paid right now to get this done because we didn't have the staff to get it done. So now you may be looking at, we're short maintenance staff, we're in a pandemic, and the ridership has been lower, so you haven't been hiring as many bus operators, but now you're seeing the ridership start to come back a little bit. So now you have R1 service. So it's not a perfect storm, it's a bad storm.
Okay. When the light rail is not running, what happens to the operators of the light rail trains? Can they be moved into another job? Just what happens to the people?
No, right now they are doing station attendant work where they are directing people where to go and so on and so forth, what buses to take instead of taking the train, and that's what they're doing currently. They're not back driving buses. Okay. They don't go back driving buses because they are electric rail operators.
I see. Okay. Very informative, Mr. Crabtree. Thank you so much, sir. All the best.
Not a problem. You have a good day.
You too. Bye-bye. The president, Amalgamated Transit Union, Local 279, Clint Crabtree. Coming up next, The World, with Professor Elliot Tepper from Carleton University. This is City News.
1310 AM.
This is Thursday, the 7th of October. Good morning, I'm Jason White. Right now in Ottawa, lots of sunshine, 14 degrees, 14 in Smiths Falls. Here's what's making news this hour. A demonstration to mark 1 year since the death of a man who fell to his death from his apartment window during a police raid. The protest was held this morning on Jasmine Crescent in Gloucester. Ontario's Special Investigations Unit decided not to charge the officers involved in the raid. A fire investigator is trying to find the cause of a blaze that destroyed a dozen townhomes under construction near the Canadian Tire Centre last night. Shortly after 6, a huge plume of smoke from the construction site could be seen from as far away as North Gore. 12 of 36 homes in a new subdivision were destroyed. Ontario's Chief Medical Officer of Health is set to release his full advice today for safely celebrating Thanksgiving and Halloween. Earlier this week, Dr. Kieran Moore touched on Thanksgiving, saying celebrating indoors and unmasked was fine as long as everyone was fully vaccinated. The Ottawa Senators signed forward Tyler Ennis to a 1-year contract. The 32-year-old has participated in Senators training camp on a professional tryout agreement after having spent last season with the Edmonton Oilers. The contract carries a value of $900,000 for the upcoming NHL season. City News Time, 11:33. I'm Jason White. For news anytime, follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
Strong voice.
Strong opinions.
Rob Snow Show returns on Rogers TV and City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
We call this The World with Elliot Tepper. It's our global view. Professor Elliot Tepper is Distinguished Senior Fellow, Norman Patterson School of International Affairs at Carleton University. Good morning and welcome back.
Thank you. Good morning, Rob.
I want to start with focusing on China, the energy crisis in China. We've all been told that China wants to have a greener economy, but it's still the world's largest emitter of greenhouse gases and the world's largest consumer of coal and other fossil fuels. Now there's an energy shortage, and it's causing rolling blackouts across the country, factory closures, causing energy prices to increase on global financial markets. Professor, what's going on?
Well, we've covered big, broad themes, and then we frame particular stories around them. One of them, which I like to focus on, is that we kind of have a global contest between democracy and authoritarianism. And then what about the future of populism? And then we've got the big question about the rise of China. What does that do to the geopolitical order? And all these kind of get tumbled together in a variety of our stories. Today, the energy crisis is making headlines in China. It's not the only story coming out of China, but it's one that's of grave interest. We should point out that both India and China, the two most populous states on Earth, do have ambitious energy commitments, the reduction of emissions commitments that they've said they're going to do. The Chinese are saying, look, we've really reduced our dependence on coal. It used to be 75% or whatever, and now it's down to well over 50, but it's going down. And a little tiny footnote, they've said in their Belt and Road Initiative, they're no longer going to fund anything overseas. But at home, they now indeed are finding themselves in a situation where the economy, so what's going on? The economy has come roaring back. They need energy. They don't have enough. Then they can't import enough. And they are worried about their internal stability, Rob. If you have a government that really is, it's a dictatorship over the population, a dictatorship of the people, and the one-party state, they have to keep delivering the goods, and they have to produce for their people, and they're worried now they're not going to, and they have to also be sure that there's not unrest in the country focusing on Xi Jinping and what he's up to. So all of that comes together in this energy crisis. What's he going to do about it?
What do you think he's going to do about it?
Well, one thing he ought to do is make up with Australia, because they were importing coal from Australia, and they picked a fight. Yeah. There's other countries around the world that possibly could provide them, but coal is now...
You know who has a lot of coal? British Columbia has a lot of coal.
Exactly. Yeah. And, of course, LNG should have been coming out.
And LNG, yes.
But basically, among other things, we're caught in a slipstream between... a future that's decarbonized and a present which relies on carbon. In a rapidly growing economy, and they are rebounding quickly in China, there's still a need. And the same thing is hitting India as well. They want to get off coal, but they're still building coal plants. So we have a mixture of things there. They want to maintain the legitimacy of the party within the government as the state. They also want to, and they have to keep prices low. They can't allow inflation to take over. And at the same time, they actually have to get the energy that they need for a rebounding economy. So there's a slipstream between the past and the future, the promises and the potential, and that's again coming back to the fact that this is a regime really that depends on its legitimacy for continuing to deliver product for their people, and now they're failing to do so in ways which we're only just learning about. I think it's even more severe than we're hearing about. Okay. So we do have a situation where the Communist Party of China is facing a crisis over energy.
Talk about China and Taiwan. Read you from a news report here. Quote, tensions with China are at their worst in 40 years, Taiwan's defense minister has said, warning of the risk of an accidental strike between the two. The minister's comments came after China sent a record number of military jets into Taiwan's air defense zone for 4 consecutive days. So I think it's helpful to get some context to this tension. What's happening?
Taiwan, the context for this is that the Civil War, which brought the Communist Party to power in 1949, successfully defeated Chiang Kai-shek and the nationalist forces, and they decamped offshore to Taiwan, settled in, and still claim to be the Republic of China. That is, they claim to be the legitimate government of China. Over time, of course, what's happened is that Taiwan has emerged as a vibrant democracy, changing governments by election. Wow, what a concept.
What a concept. Yep.
And
I believe we've lost our connection with the professor. David's going to reconnect there. I think he may have just hit mute or something by mistake, David. But if not, nope, we'll have to call him back. Okay, let's break. We'll break early, and that's fine. We're a few minutes early. It'll just give us more time on the other side. It's The World with Professor Elliot Tepper. We'll pick up right where we left off with China and Taiwan. We're also going to talk about what's going on. Why are people lining up for gas in the UK? Why is there no gas at the gas stations all across the UK? What does it have to do with Brexit? And Manny Pacquiao, the famous boxer, one of the greatest boxers ever, he wants to run for president of the Philippines in the Filipino election in May of 2022. So we'll talk about all of that when we come back with the professor, Elliot Tepper from Carleton University. This is The Rob Snow Show on City News.
Opening a business especially in a pandemic, in that kind of situation, is very challenging. First, people don't know me. People don't know my product. To build a new clientele, to build a trust for them, to show them that I care about it. I do love my food. That was the biggest challenge. And of course, in all lockdown, where I had to face it regards my employee, girls, ladies, what they work for me, I didn't want to tell them, sorry, I'm closed, I'm not having a job for you. No, they have families, they have kids to feed. So this is very important because we are family orientated. And we decided to open. We, of course, essential business. So been very tough, very, very tough, as we didn't see people on the road. Market was completely quiet, but we knew that we have to wait, and we knew that we're gonna be fine. In this town, we built online shop, Vedel Online, and we did Uber Eats, which one is picking up and is very, very popular. We have a really good feedback. So this is the song from my heart. And and we try to expand. I'm thinking about opening another location. So I want to make Vedel famous. I want to make the Vedel place to be for all the families with kids try the traditional food, what their grandparents cooked in the countries when they're from, or even Canadian people. They're more than welcome to come and try our famous pierogis. I try to be passionate about my food, organic food, food made with love, with all homemade, organic. So you can find food from all over the Europe: Polish, German, Ukrainian, Romanian, French, Armenian, so all kind of different types of food. Homemade lunches, we focus on the homemade lunches, grandma style. I keep always saying, like in my Genia babcia house, how she cooked, I wanted this love and this food over here because I believe that would bring all people around me. And all the organic cold cuts, lovely selection of sausages, cheeses, European cheeses, great selections of mustards, French cookies. All what you need from Europe you can find here at the Vedel Touch of Europe. If you think good way, that's it. You have to, I had the option to cry in the corner and say, oh, pandemic is coming. No, you need to stand up and fight for it and have your eyes open, think outside of the box and do it.
With Rob. The Rob Snow Show returns on Rogers TV and City News, 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
Back with the world with Professor Elliot Tepper from Carleton University. So we're talking about China and Taiwan. You were giving us some context to the tension, and we left off talking about how in Taiwan they have democratic elections.
Yes,
Professor.
the party currently in power is one that is viewed inside Taiwan and also, more importantly, in China, the mainland, as one that is more willing to assert an autonomous, not a sovereign entity, but a country, saying, look, it's silly to pretend that we don't exist. We do exist. And China, on the other hand, is absolutely adamant that no declaration of independence will come out of Taiwan, and nobody in Taiwan is talking about, nobody in power responsibly is talking about a declaration of independence, but they do want to be recognized as, a country, because they are. So we have a situation, I think, where three things are going on. One is possibly Xi Jinping has long made it clear that Taiwan may be on his to-do list. There's Hong Kong. Uyghurs have been pacified. Tibet's been brought under control. So the one remaining return to the motherland as part of national rejuvenation would be Taiwan. And you can see this buildup of forces in that light. The second possibility, and that's a little scary, is that if he does have problems at home, there's a literature growing, Rob, that this is peak China, that China is not going to just move from strength to strength and inevitably succeed, that we may see China at its peak now. And they need a nationalist cause to rally the population behind them. And let's go after Taiwan. And thirdly, there's a lot of firepower there. Every time China does this, Taiwan has to scramble their jets every time. So this is really a debilitating effort forced on Taiwan, but they have to do it. With all that firepower and a lot of wolf warrior attitudes, who knows? The possibility that we could tumble into something is there.
What is the Canadian government's position on the independence or the sovereignty of Taiwan?
Well, we broke diplomatic relations, as did a number of other countries, all other countries almost, in 1970. We said, okay, now China, the mainland PRC, they're in charge. They get admitted to the UN. They take that seat away from Taiwan.
Okay.
But although there's no diplomatic relations officially, there's a trade and cultural office in each state, and both of those are basically run by diplomats, very able diplomats in many cases, so that we have unofficially diplomatic relations, but not officially. We also have taken part very quietly when the two Michaels were still in captivity. We've taken part in the exercises of sending ships through the Taiwan Strait to say this is not a closed water, this is not Chinese territory. We are declaring that Canada's working with the U.S. and other countries around the world to see to it that China does not unilaterally close off the strait. So we're cautious but careful players there, and we are playing a role.
Okay, let's turn our attention to the UK and the governing Tory party in the UK under Prime Minister Boris Johnson.
Sure. Well, we're leaving the realm now of, as President Tsai said in Taiwan, the contest here is between democracy and autocracy. We have, in the case of the UK, a situation where populism in the form of Boris Johnson and the Brexiteers succeeded in convincing a very slim majority, like 1.78 or something percent in the referendum, which was, in my opinion, a needless referendum, but they called it. And then getting Brexit done tore up Britain, the UK, for years. Now it's happened, and he has a overwhelming majority in Parliament.
Yes.
Due basically to the collapse of the Labour Party. So he is now saying, this is where the populism element comes in. He's saying, well, yes, we do have some problems here, and boy, do they.
Well, yeah, like gas stations with no gas. That's a problem. But it's not that there's a shortage of gasoline. According to the reports that I have heard, there's not enough truck drivers to deliver fuel to gas stations.
Yes.
That Brexit is causing big-time labor shortage problems in the UK. What do you think about that?
Oh, it's absolutely true. I think the Washington Post had something like an editorial saying, when Brexit happened, who would have predicted there would be labor shortages? Well, anybody would. All you had to do is look at the business model that the UK is rested on, which is not just in the truck drivers. It's also in agriculture. It's across the economy. They have relied on imported labor for a significant portion of their economy, and that was cut off. They chose to withdraw from a club that could have provided that labor, and now they're paying the cost for it. And now he's trying to, and prominent Brexiteers in the past, business people are saying, this is a man with no plan. He has no idea what to do with the economy. He got us into this through Brexit, and now he has no idea where to take it, where it's going. How do we get out of it? And one of the industries is what's going to happen at Christmas, because we have turkey farms, and there's nobody there to look after the turkeys and to look after the processing of them. So
they may have a big pig call because they don't have anybody to work in the abattoirs. So
do you really want to go down the symbolism of turkeys and
and pork and pork?
And pork indeed. So the UK is in it's a global problem. Sure, there's shortages of different types, but this is a problem of their own making primarily. It was unnecessary to begin with, in my opinion, and they destroyed, by pulling out, they really weakened the EU as an entity, geopolitical entity in the world, which we have to remind ourselves was, for 75 years, transforming a cockpit of war into a bastion of democracy and economic constructiveness and peace. So the Brexit effort saying you either have to be with Brexit or you're a traitor to Britain, which is how it ultimately got framed. You're either with Britain or you're against it, and that's how they barely won. That was a misguided venture to begin with, in my opinion. And the geopolitical cost is even greater than whatever's going on right now in the UK.
This week, the Tory party's convention was being held in Manchester, and it ended yesterday with a speech from the Prime Minister where he said, I'll quote from the speech, he has a vision for a high-wage, high-skill, high-productivity economy. Quote, we are not going back to the same old broken model with low wages, low growth, low skills, low productivity, all of it enabled and assisted by uncontrolled immigration. So you say imported labor, he says uncontrolled, low-skill, low-productivity immigration. What do you think about that?
Well, ask what his business friends say about it. The people who supported the labor, the
Tories,
the Tories against labor, and who supported the Brexit in many cases, are now saying, first of all, they're not saying this, but I will because others are saying it in the UK. The research shows that bringing in labor does not depress wages. We have the same kind of study here, that the kind of rhetoric that he's using is not resting on solid research, and it's not helping the UK. They just are not. It's a great vision, but they're not investing in the kind of activities there. What's their hourly wage? How much is it going to go up? Where is he going to get the money? So again, this is what he's really good at. Grand gestures. He's fun. He's got rhetoric, which is always worth listening to. Soaring rhetoric. He's clever and witty. But in terms of solving the problems right now facing the UK, which he in turn helped engineer by championing under very spurious grounds, and by the way, not because of collusion, but this was also a test ground for the Russians to interfere in an election. They really made a difference, I think. So the scaremongering that endless lines of Muslims are going to come when it was actually Polish workers that they were relying on, and that was an issue off in the countryside. All of that, the misleading statements.
But he's willing to pick that fight with business though now, because electorally it's been successful in capturing, and the O'Toole campaign sought advice from the same kind of campaigners, UK campaigners.
Right.
It appeals to working class voters who who traditionally have voted Labour. So he's more than willing to pick this fight with with big business, which is. It's not your father's Tory party, I guess you could say.
I think that's
Margaret Thatcher wouldn't do this, for example.
No. The Iron Lady would not. So the firm control over the economy is one of the things that his opponents are now saying he does not have. We have a situation where, yes, the Labour Party there is. Let's back up a little. We have a huge majority in Parliament. He theoretically can do anything he wants. And the Labour strongholds, which fell to the Tories, he wants to maintain. Will this kind of rhetoric allow him to maintain it when all you have to do is go to the gas station and see there's nothing there? And the empty shelves and the business leaders now who are ardent Brexiteers saying this isn't working out. This is a domestic matter for the UK. They are exhausted by the Brexit arguments. They don't want to revisit it. They don't want to go back to it. But at the same time, the implications are coming home to roost. And I'm not sure that rhetoric alone, no matter how compelling it may sound as sound bites, is going to carry the day.
Okay. All right. We have 2 minutes. Okay. So we'll save talking about examining the legacy of the outgoing president of the Philippines for another day, because we have a few months before the election in the Philippines. It's not until May of next year. But this is one to watch, I think. We have more than 800,000 Canadians of Filipino ethnic origin, fourth largest ethnic minority in the country, by the way, Filipino Canadians. So it's interesting to see some of the names you may know, like a Ferdinand Marcos Jr., otherwise known as Bong Bong, running in the election, and Manny Pacquiao, the famous boxer, probably a national hero, I would imagine.
Oh, very much so.
What are some of the issues, though, do you think?
We'll have to see. The issues that ought to be there, and this is pointed out by Filipinos who have dual citizenship and plan to vote. 22,000 voted in the last election from Canada, according to their embassy. They're saying, well, there's clear issues. We have to worry about the pandemic. We have to worry about corruption. We have to worry about bread and butter issues, essentially, and how we're going to get out of the issue of managing an economy, the same kind of issues you would find anywhere else. But in the Philippines, you have the additional one of, do we really want to go back to some kind of a dictatorship or a lack of accountability? I was in the Philippines when Cory Aquino signed the writ of habeas corpus, that is, restored the rule of law in the Philippines after the Marcos era. There's a lot of concern about the fate and future of democracy depending on how this campaign goes and who wins it.
Thank you, as always, for your time. It's so great to have your insight on this complicated world of ours, Professor Tepper. We'll talk next week. Have a
Looking
great
forward to it.
Thanksgiving. Bye-bye.
Take
That's
care.
The World with Elliot Tepper, International Affairs Professor at Carleton. Back tomorrow with the Friday Free-for-All. This is The Rob Snow Show on City News.
The Rob Snow Show.
Tune in weekdays starting at 9 on Rogers TV and City News, 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
Number one for local news in Ottawa and the Valley.
This program is brought to you by Ignite TV.